Last night I dreamt of a house with no windows, only eyes. Black, hollow eyes that followed me through the snow. I woke up gasping, my breath fogging the windshield of my dad's old pickup truck. The dream clung to me like damp clothes, but shook it off. It was just another winter night. Another shift delivering for Uber Eats to scrape by during college break. The snow fell in heavy curtains, muffling the world outside, turning the streets into a labyrinth of white. My phone buzzed with a new order, pulling me back to reality. A big tip, a long drive. Nothing unusual. But something about that dream lingered, whispering that tonight wasn't like the others. I'd been driving for hours, the truck's heater, wheezing against the cold. The snow piled up on the roads, untouched by plows, and the world felt abandoned. Most drivers must have stayed home, because orders kept coming. Big ones, the kind that paid enough to keep me going until spring. Around 11 p.m., my phone pinged again. A drive-through order to a house 20 minutes away, out in a wealthy county neighborhood I'd only passed through once. The tip was too good to skip, even if my eyes were heavy and the snow was thickening. This is the last one, I told myself, gripping the wheel as the truck skidded slightly on a turn. Just drop it off and get home. The map led me across the county, past dark fields and skeletal trees. The neighborhood was a maze of sprawling estates, each house a monolith of old money, their lawns stretching like frozen oceans. No streetlights, no signs of life, just the snow, endless and unrelenting, swallowing my tire tracks. The houses loomed as I drove, their silhouettes jagged against the storm. They weren't modern, they were relics, built to last centuries, with tall windows like empty sockets. I felt them watching me, just like in my dream, and I shivered despite the heater. When I reached the address, the house stood alone at the end of a long street. It was massive, its stone facade gray and weathered, like something carved from a nightmare. The driveway was buried under a foot of untouched snow, so I parked on the road. As I stepped out, the cold bit into my legs, soaking my jeans. My boots crunched through the drifts, each step louder than it should have been in the silent night. The house was dark, not a single light glowing in its windows. Strange, I thought, but not unheard of. People order food late, people forget to turn on lights. Still, my stomach twisted as I climbed the porch steps. A piece of paper fluttered on the front door, taped crookedly against the wood. I leaned closer, my breath catching in the freezing air. In bold red letters it read notice. Below, in smaller print, were words like county and vacated, but I didn't read further. This doesn't feel right. The house felt too still, too empty, like it was holding its breath. I glanced back at my truck, its headlights cutting through the snow, and considered leaving. But the order was paid, the food was here, and I needed the money. Just drop it and go. Then I heard it. A crunch, faint but deliberate, from the shadows near the garage. My heart lurched. I turned, squinting into the storm, and saw him. A man, stepping out from the darkness. He was tall, his buzz-cut head bare. Despite the cold, his jacket stained and tattered. His face was pale, almost gray, and his eyes... God, his eyes were wrong. They were cold, not like he was angry, but like he was empty, like the house itself. Stay calm, I told myself, clutching the delivery bag. Just dropping off your order, I said, my voice shaking slightly. He didn't speak. He kept walking, toward me, his boots sinking into the snow, each step slow and deliberate. I held out the bag, hoping he'd take it and let me leave. He stopped a few feet away, close enough for me to see the frost on his eyelashes, the way his breath didn't. Fog in the air. That's not possible. My mind raced, the dream flashing back, those hollow eyes watching. He reached out, his hand trembling, and I handed him the bag. But he didn't move. He stood there, blocking the path to my truck, staring at me like he was memorizing my face. You need to leave. Now. The thought hit me like a command, sharp and urgent. Have a good night, sir, I said, stepping to the side, my boot slipping in the snow. He didn't budge, but as I moved past, his head snapped toward me. He's going to grab you. I don't know how I knew, but I felt it, like a weight pressing on my chest. I stumbled, my heart pounding, and then I saw it. His arm swung out, his fingers grazing my jacket. I jerked back, nearly falling, and he lunged, his voice low and guttural. Come with me. I ran. The snow dragged at my legs, each step a battle, but I didn't look back. His shouts echoed behind me. Stop! Running! But they only pushed me faster. My truck was a beacon, its headlights glowing through the storm. I fumbled with the keys, my hands numb, and threw myself inside, slamming the door. The engine roared as I backed out, tires spinning in the snow. In the rearview mirror, I saw him standing in the driveway, motionless, watching me. His silhouette blurred into the storm, but those eyes, I could still feel them. I didn't stop driving until I was miles away, my hands shaking on the wheel. I called the police, my voice barely steady, and told them everything. They checked the house later that night, but the man was gone. The notice on the door confirmed it. The house had been vacant for months, seized by the county. No one should have been there. No one should have ordered food. The cops had no answers, only questions, and I was left with nothing but fear. He's still out there. That thought haunts me now, every time I drive past a dark house or see snow falling in the night. I don't deliver anymore, but I can't shake the feeling that he's watching, waiting for me to step back into the storm. And when you drive alone at night, you'll feel it too. A pair of hollow eyes following you through the snow. Midnight was close, and the old wooden clock in the cabin ticked louder than it should, each second slicing through the howling wind outside. Ethan, Liam, and I had escaped the chaos of college life, trading crowded New Year's parties for a quiet night in a rented Airbnb on the edge of town. The cabin was a relic, its wooden walls creaking under the weight of a snowstorm. But it felt like ours, a sanctuary of warmth, laughter, and cheap snacks. We didn't know that by the stroke of 12, this place would become a nightmare we'd never forget. The day had been perfect. Ethan, always the planner, booked the cabin weeks ago, promising a weekend of board games and bad movies. Liam and I arrived at noon, our car crunching through the snow-covered driveway. The cabin stood alone, surrounded by pines dusted white, its nearest neighbors hidden by the curve of the hill. Inside, the air smelled of cedar and faintly of mildew, but we didn't care. We sprawled across the living room, Ethan fiddling with a dusty Nintendo Switch while Liam recounted a New Year's Eve from high school, when he'd snuck out to a bonfire and nearly set his jacket ablaze. That memory felt so distant now. A flicker of warmth against the cold reality creeping closer. By evening, the storm had thickened, snow piling against the windows like it wanted to bury us. We were deep into a movie marathon when Liam volunteered to grab snacks from the corner store. Be quick, Ethan teased, tossing him the car keys. Don't get lost in the blizzard. The door slammed shut, and the cabin felt emptier without. Liam's laughter. Ethan and I sank back into the couch, the movie's dialogue fading into the hum of the heater. Then came the knock, sharp, deliberate, like a blade cutting through the night. Ethan froze, his eyes darting to mine. "Who the hell is that?" he whispered. I shrugged, my stomach twisting. This wasn't a place where neighbors dropped by. The cabin was miles from town, isolated by snow and silence. I crept to the door, my socks silent on the wooden floor, and peered through the peephole. A man stood on the porch, his face shadowed by a hood, snow clinging to his jacket like frost on a gravestone. His breath clouded in the freezing air, but he didn't move, didn't knock again. Something about his stillness made my skin crawl, as if he knew I was watching. I flipped the metal latch and cracked the door open, just enough to see his eyes, dark, unblinking, and filled with a quiet rage. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. The man's lips curled into a sneer. "Keep it down tonight," he growled, his tone sharp enough to cut glass. "Don't disturb the whole damn neighborhood." His words hung in the air, heavy with menace, as if we'd been screaming for hours. But we hadn't. The cabin was silent, save for the movie's muffled soundtrack. I nodded, too stunned to argue, and shut the door, locking it tight. The moment the latch clicked, he pounded the door once, hard, shaking the frame. Ethan's face was pale. "What was that about?" he hissed. I shook my head, my heart racing. "No idea. He's nuts." We tried to laugh it off, but the air in the cabin had changed, the warmth replaced by a creeping dread. When Liam returned, arms full of chips and soda, we told him about the stranger. He scoffed, rolling his eyes. "Probably some grumpy old guy who hates kids. Forget him." But I couldn't. Those eyes, that voice, they lingered, like a shadow. You can't shake. The hours slipped by, the storm raging outside. We played games, watched another movie, but the mood was off, our laughter forced. As midnight approached, the clock's ticking grew louder, each second a reminder of the man's warning. Then, just before the new year could begin, a dull thud echoed from outside, followed by the unmistakable shatter of glass. We froze, the sound piercing the cabin's fragile peace. Liam was the first to move, sprinting to the window. "Oh my God," he whispered, his voice trembling. There, in the snow, stood the man from before, a metal baseball bat gleaming in his hands, surrounded by the wreckage of Liam's car. The windshield was a spiderweb of cracks, glass glittering in the moonlight. The man paced, his movements erratic, his face twisted in a way that made my blood run cold. He wasn't just angry, he was unhinged, a predator in the storm. Liam cursed, lunging for the door, but Ethan grabbed him. "Don't!" he hissed. "He's crazy." Before we could stop him, Liam threw the door open, shouting into the night. The response was immediate. A gunshot tore through the air, the bullet splintering the cabin's wooden wall. We dropped to the floor, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. Another shot rang out, then another, each one closer, the sound deafening in the small space. The man was screaming now, his voice raw, unintelligible, as he swung the bat against the door. The wood groaned under the impact, threatening to give way. I crawled to the window, peering through the blinds. He was a silhouette against the snow, his bat raised like an executioner's axe, his eyes locked on the cabin as if he could see us through the walls. Liam scrambled back, slamming the door shut and locking it. "We need to get out," he yelled, his voice breaking. Ethan fumbled for his phone, dialing 911, but the signal was weak, the storm choking the connection. The banging stopped, sudden and eerie, replaced by the howl of the wind. I risked another glance outside. The man was gone, the snow swallowing his tracks, as if he'd never been there. But the shattered glass, the bullet holes, they were real. Too real. The police arrived an hour later, their lights cutting through the blizzard. They found no trace of the man, no footprints, no clues. The car was totaled, the cabin scarred. They told us he wasn't a neighbor, wasn't even from the area. Whoever he was, he'd chosen us, targeted us for reasons we'd never know. We packed our bags and left at dawn, the cabin no longer a sanctuary but a trap we'd barely escaped. Every New Year's Eve since, I hear that clock ticking, and I wonder if he's still out there, waiting in the snow. The night didn't just feel alive. It was watching me, waiting for me to slip. Nora's hands trembled on the steering wheel, her breath fogging the frigid air inside her beat-up sedan. Early February had draped the world in a shroud of ice and snow, transforming the rural road into a glistening trap. The DoorDash app glowed on her phone, its clock ticking past 11:45 p.m., each minute a weight on her exhausted shoulders. 4 hours of navigating icy streets, dodging black ice, and delivering greasy takeout had left her eyes gritty, her mind teetering on the edge of collapse. One last order, she promised herself. Then you can crawl into bed, safe from this frozen hell. But the road ahead, a lonely stretch linking two drowsy towns, felt like it led nowhere, its surface shimmering under her headlights like a frozen river hiding something beneath. The cold seeped through the car's thin windows, curling around Nora's fingers, her breath visible in the dim dashboard light. The heater sputtered, barely fighting the chill, and the radio had faded to a faint hiss, leaving only the crunch of tires on snow and the low hum of the engine. "Feel the silence of this night," it seemed to whisper. "Let it swallow you whole." Nora blinked hard, fighting the heaviness in her eyelids, but exhaustion was a thief, stealing her focus for just a moment. That was enough. The car hit a patch of ice, lurching sideways with a sickening slide. Her heart slammed against her ribs as she gripped the wheel, but the road had no mercy. The sedan skidded off the pavement, plunging into a shallow ditch where snow cushioned the impact but trapped the tires like a hunter's snare. "You're trapped." The thought cut through her panic, sharper than the wind howling outside. Nora's hands shook as she pressed the gas pedal, the tires spinning uselessly, sinking deeper into the snow. The ditch was a frozen prison, its walls glinting under the moonlight, mocking her with their icy sheen. Beyond, the woods loomed, their bare branches clawing at the sky like skeletal fingers. No houses, no streetlights. Just the vast, suffocating quiet of a winter night, broken only by the wind's mournful wail. "Stay calm, Nora. Think." She fumbled for her phone, her fingers numb as she dialed her father, Daniel. His voice, steady and warm, pierced her fear. "I'm calling a tow truck," he said. "I'll be there in 10 minutes. Stay in the car." Relief flickered, fragile as a flame in a storm, but it couldn't erase the dread pooling in her gut. Then she saw it. A pair of headlights, faint and distant, slicing through the snowy haze half a mile down the road. Someone's out there. Hope sparked briefly. Maybe a passerby had seen her. But the lights didn't move, didn't flicker, just stared like unblinking eyes in the dark. Nora's skin prickled, her breath shallow. Why aren't they coming to help? She squinted, the snow blurring the world into a dreamlike fog, but no shape emerged. Time stretched, seconds bleeding into minutes, the silence growing heavier, pressing against her chest. When she looked again, the headlights were gone, swallowed by the night. Did they leave? Or are they still there, watching from the shadows? The wind's howl seemed to carry a warning, a low murmur that made her heart race. "Let me tell you about my brother, Ethan." Her mind grasped for comfort, pulling up a memory to anchor her. He got stuck in a snowstorm 2 years ago, alone on a back road. He said he felt like something was out there, just beyond the trees, waiting. The story sent a shiver through her, tying her fear to something real, something shared. She shook it off, forcing her eyes to the road, but the unease clung like frost. Then movement. A shadow emerged from the darkness, trudging through the snow coming from where the headlights had been. Nora's pulse roared in her ears, her breath catching as the figure grew clearer. A hooded silhouette, face hidden, moving with eerie deliberation. Keep your eyes on them, don't look away. The figure stopped just 15 feet from her car, standing in the pool of her headlights. Motionless, silent. The air inside the car turned thick, suffocating, as if the figure's presence drained the warmth from her lungs. Who are you? What do you want? Nora's hand hovered over the horn, her instinct screaming to break the spell. She pressed it lightly, a soft beep cutting through the night. But the figure didn't flinch, didn't move, just stood there. A specter forged from snow and shadow. Picture this, her mind screamed. A stranger in the night, clutching a tool, waiting for you to open the door, to make one fatal mistake. Her fingers tightened around her phone, ready to call Daniel again, when the figure turned abruptly, retreating into the darkness, its footsteps erased by the falling snow. Nora's breath shuddered out, but the fear coiled tighter, a knot in her chest. She stayed on the line with her father, her voice barely a whisper. Someone was here, Dad. They just stood there, staring at me. His calm words couldn't erase the image burned into her mind. The hooded shape, a silent promise of something unspeakable. 30 seconds later, headlights flared again, closer now, followed by the sound of a car door opening across the ditch. Nora's heart lurched, her mind flooding with images of the figure returning, armed, relentless. But then Daniel's truck roared into view, skidding to a stop, his voice cutting through the night, sharp, furious, shouting at someone unseen. Tires screeched, and another vehicle sped off, its taillights vanishing into the storm. Daniel's face was grim as he reached her, his breath clouding in the cold. He was holding something, Nora. Looked like he was about to break into your car. The tow truck came. The car was freed with minimal damage, but the real scars were deeper, etched into Nora's soul. What did he want? Why was he there? The questions haunted her, shadows that lingered in every quiet moment, whispering in the dark. You escaped this time, but what if he's still out there, waiting? 10 months ago, I stood alone in a gas station at the edge of the world, where the city's hum faded into the silence of the suburbs. The air was sharp, biting, heavy with the promise of snow. I wasn't supposed to be here, not really, but rent was climbing. My other job was bleeding me dry, and the graveyard shift at this fluorescent-lit outpost was the only thing keeping me afloat. Imagine this. A young woman, barely 22, named Lila, staring into the void of a winter night. Her breath fogging the glass counter. You're there with her now, aren't you? Feeling the weight of the quiet, the way it presses against your chest, whispering that something's wrong. Something's coming. The station wasn't creepy, not in the way you'd think. No flickering lights, no ominous shadows lurking in corners. Just a plain, tired building with shelves of overpriced snacks and a coffee machine that hadn't worked in years. Outside, the world was blanketed in the remnants of a snowstorm from days ago, the ground glistening under the faint glow of streetlights. It was just past midnight, and the roads were empty, save for the occasional car slicing through the darkness. I'd grown used to the rhythm of these nights, hours of boredom punctuated by the rare customer, usually someone grabbing a pack of cigarettes or a late-night energy drink. But tonight, the air felt heavier, like it was holding its breath. I was rearranging a display of candy bars, my fingers numb from the cold seeping through the glass doors, when the bell above the entrance chimed. Close your eyes for a second. Picture the door swinging open, the rush of icy air curling around your skin, and a man stepping inside. He's not just anyone. He's a shadow-given form, his presence pulling the warmth from the room. He was tall, gaunt, his face half hidden under a worn baseball cap. His jacket was stained, fraying at the cuffs, and his eyes darted left, then Right, scanning the empty store like a predator sizing up its prey. He moved to the counter, leaning over it, his hands gripping the edge as if anchoring himself to the moment. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice steady despite the prickle of unease crawling up my spine. I stepped closer, my sneakers squeaking faintly on the linoleum. He flinched just for a heartbeat, as if my presence startled him. His eyes locked onto mine, dark, hollow, like wells that swallowed light. "No," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. "I'm good." Then he turned and walked out, his boots leaving faint smears of snow on the floor. The door swung shut and the silence rushed back, thicker now, suffocating. Let's pause here. Imagine you're Lila, standing behind that counter, your heart beating just a little too fast. You've worked at places like this, haven't you? Places where the night feels alive, where every stranger could be a story you don't want to hear. Now, listen closely. I knew something was wrong. I'd heard the stories, gas stations robbed at 2 a.m., clerks who never saw the morning. My mind raced, piecing together the clues, his nervous glances, the way he'd lingered at the counter, the fact that he hadn't bought anything. I watched through the window as he climbed into a battered sedan parked not at the pumps, not in the lot, but in a strange no-man's land between the two. The car's engine didn't start. It just sat there, a dark shape against the snow, its windows fogged with secrets. I tried to shake it off, to tell myself I was being paranoid. But the memory of a story my coworker told me crept in. A night last winter when a man had come in, asked for directions, then pulled a knife when the clerk turned away. You're seeing it now, aren't you? The glint of steel, the moment when the world tilts into something you can't escape. I grabbed my phone, my thumb hovering over the emergency number. If I called the cops and I was wrong, I'd look like an idiot. But if I didn't, and he came back, I dialed, my voice low as I told the dispatcher about the man, the car, the way my gut screamed that something was coming. They promised an officer in a few minutes. I hung up, my eyes fixed on the sedan outside. Then, like a nightmare snapping into focus, the car's headlights flared to life. It rolled back into the lot, slow and deliberate, parking in the same odd spot. My pulse thundered in my ears. I could see shapes moving inside. 2 of them, maybe more. The driver's side was obscured, but the passenger's silhouette was unmistakable, hunched, waiting. Feel the cold now, Lila. It's not just the snow, it's the certainty that you're being watched, that the next move isn't yours. I ran to the door, my hands shaking as I twisted the lock. The bolt slid into place, a small defiance against whatever was out there. I backed away, my breath shallow, my eyes darting between the window and the counter where I kept a cheap box. Cutter, useless probably, but it was all I had. The car didn't move. No one got out. It just sat there, its engine idling, a low growl that seemed to vibrate through the walls. I imagined them watching me, planning, waiting for the moment I let my guard down. Picture this. You're alone, trapped in a glass cage, and the wolves are circling. What do? You wait. You pray. Minutes stretched into eternity, each second a battle between fear and the hope that I'd overreacted. Then headlights swept across the lot. Not the sedans, but a police cruiser's. Relief flooded me, but it was laced with dread. The cops pulled in behind the sedan, boxing it in. 2 officers stepped out, their flashlights cutting through the snow. What happened next was almost anticlimactic. No chase, no gunfire. The officers approached the car, their voices muffled but firm. They pulled 2 men out, the gaunt stranger from before and another, shorter, with a shaved head and a jacket that looked too big for him. They didn't resist. their faces blank, as if they'd already accepted defeat. I stood frozen, watching as the cops searched the car. But here's where the story twists, where the fear sinks deeper. In the trunk, they found a duffel bag stuffed with horrors. Knives, a handgun, coils of rope, rolls of duct tape, and a pair of gloves stained with something I didn't want to name. This wasn't just a robbery. This was something darker, something that would have left me as a name in a newspaper if I was lucky. The men were cuffed, taken away. The cops told me I'd done the right thing, that my call probably saved my life. But as I locked up the station that night, the snow falling heavier now, I couldn't shake the image of that bag, of what they'd planned to do with it. You're still with Lila, aren't you? Standing in that empty lot, the cold biting your skin, knowing you brushed against something evil and walked away. But it's not over. It never really is. I quit the job a week later, but the memory clings to me, a shadow that follows me into every quiet night, every empty room. I see their faces sometimes, in the corners of my dreams, and I wonder how close I came to never waking up. They say in this town, the snow keeps secrets. On Christmas Eve, it falls not just to cover the ground, but to hold the footprints of those who should not be there. I heard that story from a neighbor when I moved into this small, creaking house, far from my hometown. It was just a local legend, something to laugh about over coffee. But last Christmas, alone in a house that never felt like mine, I learned the snow doesn't just keep secrets. It shows them to you. I'd been here a year, working from home, my life a quiet routine of screens and silence. Christmas was supposed to be warm, full of lights and laughter, but my family was too far, and my vacation days too few. So, I stayed. My first Christmas alone. The house was old, its wooden floors groaning under every step, its windows rattling in the winter wind. That night, December 24th, I sat in the living room, the glow of my laptop battling the darkness. Music played softly, a futile attempt to drown out the loneliness. Outside, snow fell in heavy sheets, piling against the walls like a siege. I was deep in work, my earbuds humming, when a faint sound broke through. Not music, not the wind, but something else. A dull thud, like a footstep on the porch. I pulled out an earbud, my heart stuttering. The house was silent now, but the air felt heavier, as if someone had been there, listening. It's just the storm, I told myself, but my legs carried me to the back window. Nothing but snow, endless and untouched. At the front window, the same, until I looked down at the porch. There in the fresh snow were footprints. Deep, deliberate, they led straight to my doorstep and back to the driveway. No mail, no package, just those tracks stark against the white. My breath caught, fogging the glass. Who would come here at 11 p.m. on Christmas Eve? I checked the locks, my hands trembling, and forced myself back to work. But the image of those footprints burned in my mind, like a warning I couldn't read. I went to bed soon after, the house creaking around me, each sound sharper in the dark. I told myself it was nothing, a neighbor, a mistake. But sleep came hard, and when it did, I dreamt of snow falling inside the house, covering me in a cold, suffocating blanket. Christmas morning dawned gray and heavy, the storm still raging, outside. I woke to the smell of coffee, trying to shake the unease. The day passed in a blur, TV shows, a call to my parents, the hum of normalcy. But the footprints haunted me. I checked the porch again, but new snow had buried them, leaving the world clean and deceptive. Maybe I imagined it, I thought, but my gut twisted, refusing to let go. I stayed inside, the wind howling, the house feeling less like a home and more like a trap. By evening I was restless, my dinner barely touched. The storm had worsened, the windows rattling like they might shatter. I was about to head to bed when I heard it again. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, crunching through the snow toward the front door. My heart stopped. I froze, straining to listen. The steps paused, then retreated, fading into the storm. I crept to the door, my pulse pounding in my ears, and peered through the peephole. Nothing. But when I opened the door, the footprints were back, identical to the night before, leading to the porch and away, vanishing into the snow. Fear clawed at me, but I forced myself to stay awake, sitting on the couch with the TV flickering. I must have dozed off because when my eyes snapped open, the room was dark, the TV casting eerie shadows. I stood, my legs heavy, and started toward my bedroom. But as I reached the hallway, something was wrong. My bedroom door, always closed, hung open, a black void in the dim light. My stomach dropped. I pushed it wider, my hand shaking, and flicked on the light. The floor was covered in wet footprints. They snaked across the room, from the window to the door, glistening in the harsh light. My breath hitched, my mind screaming. Someone was in here. I spun around, flipping on the hallway light, and saw more footprints leading to the living room. They stopped just outside, as if whoever it was had seen me sleeping on the couch and turned back. They were here while I slept. The realization hit like ice water, flooding me with terror. I grabbed my phone, my hands barely working, and called the police, my voice a strained whisper. They came quickly, their flashlights cutting through the snow, but found nothing. No one, no tracks. Outside, the storm having erased everything. They checked the window, found it unlocked, and theorized the intruder thought the house was empty, coming back after I didn't answer the door. A robbery, they said, but it didn't feel right. Why leave no trace? Why come back? I done. End of. Artifact content due to token limit. But the story continues as follows. Live in that house anymore, but the snow still follows me. Every winter when the first flakes fall, I see those footprints in my mind, leading to a door I can't. And when you're alone on a quiet night, you'll see them too. Tracks in the snow, watching, waiting for you to open the door. The snow fell in whispers, a soft curtain beyond my apartment window, lulling me into a fragile sleep on the couch. It was a cold January night, the kind where the world felt hushed, wrapped in a blanket of frost. I'd spent the day wandering, snowy streets, browsing stores, and savoring the quiet of my week off. Now, back in my small apartment, the hum of the TV was my only company, its glow flickering across the room. But at 8:30 p.m., a sharp electric buzz tore through the silence, slicing my dreams apart. I jolted awake, my heart stumbling in my chest. The intercom buzzed again, insistent, like a wasp trapped in a jar. I rubbed my eyes, disoriented, the room dim except for the TV's pale light. Who could be here? I lived alone in a 4-unit building, a concrete box on the edge of town, and I hadn't invited anyone. My neighbors, 2 elderly women and a quiet student, rarely had visitors, especially not in a snowstorm. I shuffled to the window, careful not to lift the blinds too high, and peered down at the entrance. A man stood there, broad and hulking, his face half hidden by a scarf, snow clinging to his coat like a second skin. He wasn't familiar. Not a neighbor, not a delivery driver. His presence felt wrong, like a shadow cast by something I couldn't see. I watched him press the buzzer. Again, his gloved hand heavy on the button, but no one else answered. Why my apartment? I thought of a night last summer when the buzzer had rung at 2 a.m. A drunk stranger mistaking my unit for his friend's. I'd ignored it then, and the memory pushed me to do the same now. I muted the intercom, the buzz dying with a faint click, and sank back onto the couch. But the unease lingered, a cold weight in my gut. The TV droned on, its voices a distant hum as I tried to shake the feeling. I dozed off again, the snow's soft rhythm pulling me under. Hours later, a thud, low, heavy, like a fist against wood, ripped me from sleep. My eyes snapped open, the room now dark, the TV casting long shadows across the walls. My breath caught as I listened, every nerve straining. Was it the wind? A neighbor dropping something? But the silence that followed was worse. Thick, suffocating, as if the apartment itself was holding its breath. I slid off the couch, my bare feet cold against the floor, and crept toward the hallway. The air felt heavier now, charged with something I couldn't name. Then it came again, a second thud, louder, closer, from the direction of the front door. My pulse hammered in my ears as I moved forward, each step deliberate. My eyes locked on the hallway's end. The door to my apartment stood there, a slab of faded wood, and as I approached, my stomach dropped. It was wide open, a gaping maw, letting in the icy breath of the night. I froze, my mind scrambling to make sense of it. I'd locked it. I always locked it. The snow outside swirled in lazy spirals, visible through the open doorway. But no one was there. No footsteps, no shadow. I took a shaky step back, my gaze darting to the floor. A faint trail of melted snow glistened on the hardwood, leading from the door to the hallway. My throat tightened as I followed the trail, each wet smear a silent accusation. It stopped at my bedroom door, closed and unyielding. But as I reached for the handle, I saw it. A deep, jagged dent in the wood, right by the knob, as if someone had struck it with all their strength. Panic clawed at my chest, and you'll feel your breath grow heavy as you imagine this moment. I backed away, my hands trembling as I fumbled for my phone. The apartment was silent now, but the silence felt alive, watching me. I locked myself in the bathroom, the only room with a sturdy bolt, and dialed 911. My voice barely a whisper as I explained. "Someone's been in my apartment," I said, my eyes fixed on the door, waiting for another thud. But none came. The silence stretched, endless, until the police arrived, their boots heavy on the stairs. They searched the apartment, their flashlights cutting through the dark. The front door's lock was intact, but the frame showed scratches, faint but deliberate. The dent on the bedroom door was real, a single frustrated blow. Not enough to break through, but enough to mark the wood forever. They found no one. No footprints beyond the hallway, no sign of the man I'd seen. The police theorized someone had buzzed every unit until a neighbor, perhaps too trusting, let them in. They'd chosen my apartment, maybe thinking it was empty. But why they struck the bedroom door and left was a mystery. I stayed in that apartment, though every creak of the building now feels like a warning. The buzz of the intercom haunts me, a sound that once meant nothing but now carries the weight of that night. I checked the locks twice, 3 times before bed, but the feeling never leaves, that someone somewhere knows exactly where I am. And in the quiet of a snowy night, you'll hear it too, that buzz, and wonder if it's for you. The storm wasn't just outside my house. It was inside, whispering that I wasn't alone. Evelyn sat at her desk, the laptop's blue glow casting jagged shadows across the walls of her makeshift office. Early December had unleashed a merciless blizzard, burying the world in a suffocating shroud of snow and ice. The house, once a lively space shared with her roommate of 4 years, now felt like a cavern, its emptiness pressing against her chest. Her roommate's departure had brought a better job and more space, but also a solitude that the storm amplified into something alive, something watching, This is your sanctuary, she told herself. A fortress against the cold. But as the wind screamed, rattling the windows like a trapped animal, the house seemed to breathe, its walls hiding secrets the blizzard had dragged to her doorstep. The cold seeped through the drafty walls, curling around Evelyn's fingers as she typed, her breath clouding in the dim light. The bedroom, once her roommate's, was now her office, its bare walls and single window a stark reminder of her isolation. Her job allowed remote work during the storm, a small reprieve in a week of chaos. Snow piled against the glass, blurring the world into a white abyss, and the power flickered, threatening to plunge her into darkness. Feel the storm's hunger, it seemed to murmur. Let it consume you. She pushed through emails, the monotony a fragile shield against the unease creeping into her bones. But then a sharp sound pierced the wind's wail. A knock at the front door, heavy and deliberate, like a heartbeat from the void. Evelyn's breath caught, her pulse spiking. Who could be out in this? Her house sat on a lonely street, far from neighbors, surrounded by fields now lost to the storm's wrath. She rose, her steps hesitant, the floorboards icy beneath her socks. Peering through the peephole, she saw a man on the porch, his figure shrouded in a bulky winter jacket, snow clinging to him like a second skin. He didn't look like a delivery driver or a worker, just a man, ordinary, yet jarringly out of place. In the blizzard's grip. Stay sharp, Evelyn, trust your instincts. She opened the door, a blast of frigid wind stinging her face, carrying the scent of frost and something sharper, like fear. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice steady despite the knot tightening in her chest. The man's smile was strained, his face pale, his eyes flickering with something unreadable. "I'm so sorry to bother you," he said, his voice rough, as if the cold had scraped it raw. "My car slid into the snowbank by your road. I don't have my phone. Could I borrow yours to call for help?" His words felt rehearsed, too polished for the storm's chaos. Evelyn's skin prickled, a warning deep in her gut. "Give me a moment," she said, closing the door and locking it. She crossed to the kitchen window, her heart pounding as she peered out. There it was, a small SUV tilted against the curb, half buried in snow, its headlights dim like dying stars. He's telling the truth, but why does it feel wrong? She grabbed her coat, slipped on boots, and clutched her phone tightly, returning to the porch. Standing a careful distance away, Evelyn handed him the phone, her eyes locked on his hands, searching for any sudden move. He dialed quickly, speaking in hushed tones to someone he called his brother, promising he'd wait. He returned the phone with a nod of thanks and trudged back to his car, his figure fading into the swirling snow. Evelyn locked the door, her pulse still racing, and checked the window. He was inside the SUV, a dark shape shifting in the driver's seat. "It's done," she told herself. He got what he needed. She returned to her office, the laptop's hum a faint comfort, but the unease clung like frost, a shadow whispering doubts in her mind. By 7 p.m., Evelyn closed her laptop, her mind too frayed to continue. The storm had worsened, the wind a relentless roar, shaking the house like a living beast. She remembered the man and glanced out the window. The SUV was still there, its outline barely visible through the snow's veil. 3 hours? Why is he still here? Her stomach twisted, a cold dread settling in. Was he waiting for his brother, or was he watching her? She pushed the thought away, heading to the kitchen to heat a frozen meal. The microwave's drone a weak distraction. Settling on the couch, she flicked on the TV, the flickering images a frail barrier against the storm's oppressive presence. But the house felt different now, its walls closing in, the wind's howl carrying a warning she couldn't ignore. At 9:30, exhaustion pulled her upstairs. She stepped into the bathroom, the hot water of the shower a fleeting refuge from the cold. But minutes into the warmth, a violent sound shattered her peace. A thunderous pounding on the front door, each blow reverberating through the house, shaking the walls like a heartbeat of rage. Someone's trying to get in. Her blood froze. Her body locked in a primal panic. The pounding was relentless, the door handle rattling as if someone were trying to rip it apart. "Move, Evelyn, you have to act." She shut off the water, her hands trembling as she pulled on clothes. Her mind flooded with images of the man from the porch, his smile now a mask for something monstrous. She crept to the upstairs hallway, her breath shallow, waiting for another sound. But the pounding stopped, replaced by a silence so heavy it felt alive, pressing against her lungs. Is he gone, or is he waiting? She edged downstairs, each step deliberate, the wind's wail the only sound. At the front door, she peered through. The peephole. Nothing but snow and darkness, a void that swallowed hope. Her heart pounded as she ran to the window. The SUV sat unchanged, but the driver's seat was empty. He's out there somewhere. Fear clawed at her chest, her fingers dialing 911. Her voice a whisper as she reported the terror unfolding. "Let me tell you about my neighbor, Clara." Her mind grasped for solace, pulling up a memory to anchor her fear. 2 winters ago, she let a stranger in during a storm, thinking he needed help. The next day, her jewelry was gone, and she swore she saw him watching her house weeks later. The story tightened Evelyn's fear, a warning etched in someone else's loss. The police arrived, their flashlights slicing through the storm's chaos. They found multiple sets of shoe prints circling the house, some leading to the SUV, others erased by the blizzard's fury. The license plate confirmed the man as the owner, but he was gone, vanished into the night. The officers speculated he was fleeing something, someone, but his true intent remained a void, a question that gnawed at Evelyn's mind. Was he desperate, or was he hunting me? The house was no longer a sanctuary, its walls a fragile cage. The storm's roar a reminder of the night she stood on the edge of something unspeakable. You helped him, but what if he's still out there, waiting for another chance? Midnight in a snow-choked nowhere, and I'm the only soul awake in a gas station that smells of stale coffee and despair. My name's Ethan, 24, tethered to this fluorescent purgatory by a paycheck that barely keeps the lights on. Outside, the world is a frozen wasteland, the kind that swallows sound and secrets alike. You're here with me, aren't you? Standing behind this counter, the cold creeping up your spine, knowing the night is watching you back. Something's out there, hidden in the snow, and it's closer than you think. The station was a relic, its walls stained with years of neglect, the air thick with the ghost of motor oil. I worked the 11 to 7 shift, a grueling stretch that left me hollow, my eyes burning from lack of sleep. I didn't choose this job. It chose me, the only place desperate enough to fit my fractured schedule. That night, the snow fell in heavy, curtains blanketing the lot in silence. I parked my beat-up hatchback next to the only other car, my co-worker's, who left minutes after I arrived, his taillights fading into the dark. Alone now, I scanned the manager's to-do list. Restock, sodas, sweep the floor, check the pumps. An hour's work maybe, but I dragged it out, anything to stay awake in this endless night. I was slouched behind the counter, scrolling through my phone, the glow casting shadows on the glass. The clock read 12:03 a.m. when headlights pierced. The snow outside. Close your eyes. Picture an old SUV rolling into the lot, its engine dying with a shudder, its shape blurring in the storm. It parked by a pump, but no one got out. I waited, expecting the usual. A tired driver grabbing gas or a snack. 10 minutes passed. Nothing. The SUV sat, headlights off, doors shut, as if it had driven itself. Feel the unease now, Ethan. The night's too quiet, too still. I stood, my breath fogging the window as I peered out. The lot was empty, the snow untouched except for the SUV's tire tracks. In this cold, no one could stay in a dead car for long. They'd freeze. I pulled on my jacket, the fabric stiff with frost, and stepped outside. The wind bit my face, the snow stinging my eyes. You're out here now, aren't you? The air so cold it hurts to breathe. The station's lights fading behind you. I approached the SUV, my boots crunching in the snow. Up close, it was a wreck. Rusted. Dented. The kind of vehicle you'd abandon, not drive. I pressed my face to the driver's window, squinting through the frost. Anyone in there? Just checking if you're okay, I called, my voice swallowed by the storm. The seats were empty, or so I thought. The glass was too fogged to be sure. Confused, I stepped back, scanning the lot. No one, just snow and silence. Then I saw them. Footprints in the snow, fresh and deliberate, leading from the SUV toward a station. Not to the front door, but to the side where the supply room's back entrance hid in shadow. My stomach twisted. You see it, don't you? The trail of an intruder. Someone who didn't want to be seen. I followed the prints, my heart pounding until the cold drove me back inside. I huddled by the counter's heater, my hands trembling as warmth seeped into my fingers. But listen, Ethan. The night's not done with you yet. A dull thud echoed from the back of the station, heavy, like something falling in the dark. I froze, my pulse roaring in my ears. The floor near the counter was wet, puddles of melted snow trailing toward the supply room. I moved slowly, each step a battle against the fear clawing my chest. You're walking into the unknown now, the darkness pulling you in. The supply room door was ajar, the air inside colder than it should have been. In the shadows, behind a shelf of cleaning supplies, a figure stood, tall, broad-shouldered, a scruffy beard catching the faint light. His eyes locked onto mine, unblinking, like a predator sizing up its mark. My heart stopped, time stretching into a nightmare. You've seen him before, haven't you? In the stories your old boss told about the drifter who broke in last year, who left nothing but bloodstains and questions. I backed away, my legs leaden, and grabbed the store phone, whispering to the dispatcher for help. The next 10 minutes were a purgatory of silence. You're waiting, Ethan. The night pressing against you, the figure still out there watching. I stood by the counter, eyes fixed on the supply room, expecting him to lunge out. But nothing moved. No sound. No shadow. When the cops arrived, their flashlights swept the room. But he was gone. Gone, like he was never there. Wet footprints circled the back door, leading outside to fresh tracks in the snow, stretching into the vast, dark field beyond the station. The field went on for miles, a black void no one could search at night. The SUV was towed, but its ownership was a dead end. No records, no trace. Days later, the cops found nothing in that field, though the cold that night should have killed anyone out there. You're still here, Ethan, aren't you? Standing in that empty station, the snow falling like a veil, knowing something was in that room with you. I quit soon after, but the memory lingers. The footprints, the eyes, the SUV that didn't belong. Every night I wonder who he was, what he wanted, and whether he's still out there, walking through the snow, waiting for another lonely soul. Every town has a story no one tells out loud. Here it's about Route 17. a stretch of road where the night swallows drivers whole. My roommate told me that tale last summer, his voice low like he was afraid the walls would hear. A trucker stopped at a gas station, saw a man who wasn't there, and vanished by morning. I laughed, called it nonsense, but on a Friday night in December, with snow dusting the streets like ash, I pulled into that same station, my phone glowing with an Uber Eats order that felt wrong. The cold was a blade against my skin, and the silence was louder than my car's engine. I didn't know I was about to meet the ghost that haunts Route 17. I was a college kid, scraping by with delivery shifts on weekends. No plans, no parties, just me, my beat-up sedan, and the open road. The app was my lifeline, pinging orders every hour, enough to keep me afloat until spring. Around 6 p.m., as the sky turned bruise purple, a new order came in. Burger King. Decent tip, but the drop-off wasn't a house. The map pinned a gas station at the corner of two empty streets. Weird, I thought, but not impossible. Maybe a worker needed a quick meal. I tapped begin route, the heater rattling, my headlights. Slicing through the gathering dark, Route 17 stretched ahead, a ribbon of asphalt flanked by skeletal trees, their branches clawing at the sky. The station appeared after a lonely drive, its neon sign flickering like a dying star. The word gas buzzed, half-lit, casting a sickly glow over the pumps. No cars, no people, just the station, hunched and forgotten, its windows smeared with grime. I pulled into a spot at the back, my tires crunching on a thin layer of snow. The app should have alerted the customer, so I waited, my breath fogging the windshield. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the wind's low moan and the faint hum of the station's lights. Where are they? My fingers tapped the steering wheel, a nervous rhythm as the cold seeped through the car's thin walls. I checked my phone. No reply. 3 minutes passed, then 5. The station felt alive, its shadows shifting in the flickering light. The pumps stood like sentinels, their hoses coiled like snakes. I rolled down my window, the air sharp with the smell of old gasoline and rust. Across the street, shuttered shops stared back, their windows black as voids. The intersection was a ghost town, no cars, no life. This isn't right, my gut warned, a cold knot tightening in my chest. I typed a message through the app. At the gas station, parked in the back, where are you? The words felt like a plea, unanswered in the dark. The radio crackled, spitting static, though I hadn't touched it. My heart skipped. I turned it, off the silence rushing back, thicker now. Then a flicker in the corner of my eye, a shadow moving behind the pumps. I squinted, my pulse quickening, but it was gone. Just the wind, I told myself, but my hands gripped the wheel tighter. The station's lights buzzed louder, flickering in a rhythm that felt deliberate, like a code I couldn't crack. I was about to drive away when headlights stabbed through the snow. A truck, old and battered, its red paint peeling like dried blood. It didn't stop at the pumps but rolled toward me, parking 2 spaces away. Why come here if you ordered delivery? The driver's door opened, and a man stepped out. He was tall, his frame gaunt under a stained jacket, his pants torn at the knees. His face was a map of scars and dirt, his hair matted, but his eyes... God, his eyes were wrong. They were too bright, too focused, like they didn't belong in his skull. He stared at me unblinking, and the air grew heavier, like the world was holding its breath. Run. Now. The thought was a command, sharp and urgent, but my body wouldn't move. I forced a smile, holding up the food bag. Got your order, I said, my voice barely audible over the wind. He didn't answer. He took a step, then another, his boots scraping the snow, each movement slow and deliberate. His gaze never wavered, pinning me in place. I noticed his hands, calloused, trembling, but not from the cold. His breath didn't fog, though the air was freezing. That's not human. My mind flashed to the story my roommate told, the trucker who saw a man who wasn't there. I set the bag on the ground, my hands shaking, and backed toward my car. He moved faster, his stride lengthening, his eyes burning into mine. He's not here for the food. I yanked open my door, sliding inside, my keys slipping in my numb fingers. He was at my window now, his face inches from the glass, his eyes glowing. In the dashboard's light. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice low, like gravel dragged over bone. I froze, my heart hammering as he reached for the handle. The engine roared to life and I threw the car into reverse, tires spinning in the snow. He lunged, his fingers grazing the door, but I floored it, the car lurching backward. He ran to his truck, the engine snarling as he peeled out after me. I sped through the intersection, ignoring a red light, my hands slick with sweat. His headlights followed, twin beams cutting through the snow, closer with every second. I weaved through empty streets, my breath ragged, until I reached a busier road, cars and lights flooding the dark. His truck slowed, then turned away, vanishing into the storm. I didn't stop until I was miles away, my chest heaving as I dialed the police. They checked the station, found the bag untouched, but no man, no truck. I couldn't recall his license plate. My mind was a fog of fear. The cops, see, had nothing, just my story, and I was left with a void where answers should be. He's still out there waiting. That thought claws at me every time I drive past a gas station, its lights flickering in the night. I don't deliver anymore, but I feel him, his eyes burning through the dark, searching for me. And when you stop at a lonely station, you'll feel him too. A man who doesn't belong, watching from the shadows, ready to claim you for Route 17. The snow-dusted street stretched endlessly before me, my headlights carving a trembling path through the suffocating dark. It was a brutal December night, the kind where the cold clawed at your soul, and the world felt like it had turned its back on you. I was Owen, a broke college kid hustling pizzas for Papa John's, my beat-up sedan groaning under the weight of another long shift. The snow had slowed every delivery, turning quick runs into grueling treks. Tonight's final order, though, would drag me into a nightmare buried in the shadows of a forgotten neighborhood, one I'd never escape unchanged. I'd been driving for hours, the dashboard clock glaring 9:30 p.m., my eyes heavy from the endless loop of orders. The heater hummed, barely keeping the chill at bay, as my phone buzzed with 2 new deliveries. Both were headed to a part of town I dreaded, a decaying maze of old houses on the county's edge, where streetlights flickered and shops stood shuttered, their windows like empty eyes. This place always felt wrong, like it was waiting for something to happen. I thought of a delivery last winter, to a house that looked abandoned, only to find a kid shivering on the porch, his eyes darting as if he'd seen a ghost. That night had left a knot in my gut, a warning I ignored. Tonight, that knot tightened, whispering that I should turn back. The first delivery was easy. A kind old man, his smile a fleeting warmth as he pressed a crumpled tip into my hand. But the second address was different, deeper in the neighborhood, where the houses grew sparse and the trees loomed like silent sentinels. My GPS guided me down a narrow road, the pavement cracked and slick with ice. My headlights swept over, sagging fences and overgrown yards, each house darker than the last. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the crunch of snow under my tires, and you'll feel your chest tighten as you picture this desolate place. I pulled up to the address, a low, battered house half swallowed by tangled shrubs. A single porch light flickered, casting jagged shadows across the snow-covered steps. I grabbed the pizza boxes, my breath clouding in the freezing air, and trudged to the door, my sneakers sinking into the drifts. I knocked, the sound swallowed by the night's heavy stillness, and waited, the cold biting at my exposed skin. A minute dragged by, then another, my patience fraying as the wind stung my face. Something felt off, like the house itself was watching. The door opened slowly, revealing a woman in her 40s, her hair a wild tangle, her eyes sunken and lifeless, as if she'd been pulled from a restless sleep. Her sweater hung loose, stained and frayed, and her gaze lingered on me too long, searching for something I couldn't name. "Your order," I said, holding out the boxes, my voice flat as I recited the total. She took the pizzas, setting them on a cluttered table inside, and muttered about needing cash. Her movements were slow, deliberate, as if she was stalling. And you'll feel a chill as you imagine her eyes, empty yet sharp with intent. She vanished into the house, leaving me on the porch, the silence pressing in like a physical weight. I shifted, my gaze drifting to my car, its headlights slicing through the falling snow. That's when I saw him. A man crouched by my driver's side door, his silhouette stark against the glow. My stomach plummeted as he tugged at the handle, his movement swift, practiced. I squinted, catching the glint of metal in his hand. A tool, maybe a blade. Panic surged, and you'll feel your heart race as you realize the trap closing around you. I spun back to the woman, now back in the doorway, her face no longer weary but twisted with a cold fury. "Come inside," she hissed, her hand shooting out to seize my arm. Her grip was like steel, her nails biting through my jacket, and you'll feel your breath stop as she yanks you toward the dark. I stumbled, my eyes locked on the man by my... He'd seen me now, his head snapping up, and he broke into a sprint, his boots pounding the snow, his shadow growing larger with every step. Instinct kicked in. I tore free, shoving the woman back, and ran, not to my car where the man was nearly upon me, but into the trees beside the house. The forest swallowed me whole, its branches clawing at my face, the moonlight barely piercing the dense canopy. My lungs burned, each breath a shard of ice as I stumbled over roots and snow, the ground uneven beneath me. Behind me, the man's footsteps thundered, his shouts raw and guttural, swallowed by the wind. You'll feel the terror of being hunted, the forest a labyrinth with no escape, the cold sinking into your bones. I pushed harder, my legs screaming, my heart pounding so loud it drowned out the world. The trees seemed to close in, their shadows twisting into shapes that weren't there. A branch snapped underfoot, the sound sharp, and for a moment I thought it was him, closer than I'd feared. But the footsteps faded, his pursuit slowing, and I broke through the trees onto a slick side street, the pavement glinting under a lone streetlight. I fumbled for my phone, my hands trembling as I dialed 911, my voice ragged as I choked out the story. 10 minutes later, a patrol car found me, my body shaking in the cold, my mind replaying that glint of metal by my car. Another unit raced too, the house catching the man still prying at my door, his tools scattered in the snow. The woman was inside, her excuses crumbling under questioning. The police unraveled their plan. Broke and desperate, they'd targeted delivery drivers, luring them with fake orders to rob them blind. But you'll wonder, as I do, what they'd have done if I'd stepped inside, if I hadn't seen him by my car. That grip, that speed. They weren't just after my wallet, they were arrested. Their scheme stopped before it could claim others, but the fear lingers. Every time I drive those streets, my headlights sweep the shadows, and I see him, there, his eyes burning, waiting for me to stop. The silence wasn't empty. It was alive, holding its breath, waiting for me to make a mistake. Clara stood in the doorway of the weathered cabin, her breath fogging in the biting January air, the frozen lake beyond glinting like a mirror under the pale sky. She'd rented this barebones retreat, a single-room shack nestled by an ice fishing lake to escape the chaos of her life. Endless work emails, city noise, the weight of expectations. The cabin was stark, its walls lined with faded wood, furnished only with a creaky bed, a scarred table, and a stone fireplace. But its isolation was a balm to her frayed nerves. "This is your sanctuary," she told herself. "A place to find peace, to be alone." But as the snow fell, draping the world in a suffocating white, the wilderness felt like it was watching, its silence a cloak hiding something sinister in the shadows. Clara unpacked her gear, the cold seeping through her gloves, her boots tracking wet snow across the rough floor. The cabin's lone window offered a view of snow-laden pines, their branches bowing under winter's weight, their shapes blurring in the gathering storm. She knelt by the fireplace, coaxing flames from dry logs, the fire's warmth pushing back the chill that clung to her skin. "Feel the stillness of this place," it seemed to murmur. "Let it wrap around you." She brewed coffee, the bitter scent mingling with the smoky air, and settled into a chair, the afternoon slipping away in a haze of quiet. The fire's glow painted the walls with shifting shadows, a fleeting comfort that lulled her into an early sleep, the world outside fading into the night. Dawn broke at 7 a.m., the cabin shrouded in a gray half-light. Clara layered on her gear, thick, coat scarf, heavy boots, and set out for the lake, a 10-minute trek down a forest path buried in snow. The path was pristine, her footprints carving a solitary trail through the untouched white, the trees standing like silent guardians, their branches heavy with ice. At the lake she chose a spot, drilled through the thick ice and settled in. The rhythmic pull of her fishing line, a meditation that eased her mind. "This is why you're here," she thought, "to let the world dissolve." Hours passed. 3, maybe 4. The snow thickening, the wind sharpening into a blade. As the storm grew, she packed her gear, her breath clouding the air, and started back, the path now a swirling blur of white. Halfway to the cabin, Clara froze, her heart stuttering. Beside her morning footprints, a second set ran parallel, fresh and deep, pressed into the snow as if someone had walked beside her. Someone was here. The tracks stretched from the lake's edge, pausing where she'd fished, then doubled back toward the cabin. Her pulse surged, the wind's wail now a sinister whisper in her ears. Who would be out here? The nearest town was miles away, the lake a secret known only to a few. She followed the tracks, her boots sinking into the snow, her eyes darting to the trees for any sign of movement. The prints veered off the path near the cabin, cutting into the dense woods, a straight line vanishing among the pines. They didn't enter, but they were so close. Dread coiled in her chest, a cold weight that followed her back to the cabin's door. Inside, Clara bolted the lock, the fireplace's heat doing little to thaw the ice in her veins. The cabin felt smaller now, its walls too thin. The single window a glaring weakness she hadn't noticed before. "There's no one out here," she told herself. "Just you and the storm." But the tracks told a different story, one her mind couldn't shake. She cooked a simple meal, the scent of canned stew a frail distraction, and tried to read, the words blurring as her thoughts spiraled to the footprints. "Let me tell you about my friend, Sam," her mind offered, grasping for comfort. 2 winters ago, he camped alone in these woods. He found tracks circling his tent at night, too many to count. He swore something watched him, waiting. And when he left, he found a knife stuck in a tree, as if marking his escape. The memory tightened her fear. rooting it in a shared terror, a warning from another's brush with the unknown. An hour after sunset, the world outside plunged into darkness, the snow a ghostly veil against the window's glass. Clara sat by, the fire, her book forgotten, her ears straining for any sound beyond the wind's mournful howl. Then, a faint sound broke the quiet, deliberate, rhythmic, the unmistakable tread of footsteps in the snow, each step a pulse of intent. Someone's coming. Her heart pounded as she crept to the window, her breath shallow and peered into the night. A figure emerged from the trees, moving toward the path, their form shrouded in heavy clothing, every inch covered, as if the storm had forged them from snow and shadow. "Stay hidden, Clara. Don't let them know you're here." The figure turned, heading straight for the cabin, their steps steady, unrelenting, cutting through the snow with purpose. Clara dropped to the floor, her back pressed against the wall, her pulse roaring in her ears. The footsteps grew closer, each one a hammer against her nerves, until they stopped just outside the window. They're right there. A shadow stretched across the glass, long and distorted, as if the figure were leaning in, searching the cabin's dim interior. Her breath caught, her body frozen, every instinct screaming to flee. She tilted her head, just enough to see, and met a pair of eyes, cold, unblinking, piercing through the glass, locking onto hers with a hunger that stole her breath. "They know I'm here." Panic surged, her hand fumbling for the knife on the table, its blade glinting in the firelight. The figure tugged at the window, the frame straining under the pressure, but it held. Clara gripped the knife, her voice trapped in her throat as the figure tried again, then abruptly turned, their shape melting into the snowy woods, retracing the path of the earlier tracks. Clara's legs buckled, her breath shuddering out, but fear propelled her forward. She grabbed her bag, doused the fire, and ran to her car, the storm erasing her footprints as she fled. The cabin's faint glow vanished in her rearview mirror, but the eyes at the window lingered, seared into her mind like a brand. They followed me from the lake, waited for night, came to get inside. The police searched but found nothing, the storm swallowing any trace, leaving only her story and a void of questions. What did they want? Why me? The cabin was no longer a refuge but a warning, its silence a reminder of the night she stood on the edge of something unspeakable. You escaped. But what if they're still out there watching, waiting for another chance? 2 winters ago, on a Christmas night dusted with frost, I stood alone in a suburban house, the glow of a Christmas tree mocking the darkness outside. My name's Clara, a 20-year-old student scraping by on dreams and instant noodles. The world was supposed to be merry, but the air felt heavy, like it was holding a secret. You're standing with me now, aren't you? In this quiet house, the cold pressing against the windows, sensing something watching from the shadows. It's out there, and it knows you're alone. The house was small, a rental I shared with my roommate Mia. Both of us too broke to join. The holiday exodus. Our families weren't the festive type, so we'd stayed behind, decorating with dollar store tinsel and swapping cheap gifts. A scarf for her, a mug for me. It was our makeshift Christmas, cozy in its simplicity. By noon on Christmas Day, we'd torn open our presents, laughing over stale cookies and bad TV movies. But by 5 p.m., Mia got a text about a campus party. I'd planned to go, my jacket already on, but a wave of exhaustion hit me, heavy and unyielding. "Go without me," I told her, forcing a smile. She hesitated, then grabbed her keys and left, the door locking behind her with a soft click. The house fell silent, the kind of quiet that feels like a weight on your chest. I sank into the couch, munching on chips, the TV droning in the background. The Christmas tree's lights blinked, casting fleeting shadows on the walls. Feel the stillness, Clara. It's not peaceful. It's waiting. Around 8 p.m., restlessness stirred me. The neighborhood was dark, shops closed, but I craved movement. I pulled on my coat, the wool scratching my neck, and stepped into the cold. The air was sharp, the ground dusted with frost, but not unbearable. I wandered the streets, admiring houses aglow with Christmas lights, their warmth a stark contrast to the empty park I crossed next. Picture it. A path winding through bare trees, the moonlight pale on the snow, and a man sitting alone on a bench. He was bundled in a dark coat, his face shadowed, but his eyes caught mine as I passed, cold, piercing, like they saw through me. My stomach tightened. I quickened my pace, the park's silence pressing in, my breath clouding the air. His gaze lingered in my mind, a splinter I couldn't shake. Back home, I fumbled with my keys, the porch light flickering. I stepped inside, kicking off my boots, the warmth of the house a brief comfort. But stop, Clara, listen. A heavy thud echoed from the porch, sharp and sudden, like a fist against wood. My heart lurched. I'd barely been inside a minute. I crept to the door, my fingers trembling as I peered through the peephole. It's him. The man from the park standing on your porch, his face blank, eyes like voids. No smile, no frown, just an emptiness that chilled me deeper than the night. I cracked the door an inch, my voice barely steady. Are you okay? Do you need help? He didn't answer, didn't move, just stared, his silence louder than any threat. I asked again, my words faltering. Nothing. Fear coiled in my gut. I shut the door, locking it, and pressed my eye to the peephole again. He stood there, unmoving for a full minute, then stepped out of view. I glanced at the living room window, its curtains wide open, exposing the Christmas tree and couch to the night. He's watching, Clara. He sees your life laid bare. I wanted to close the curtains, but the thought of him seeing me move stopped me cold. I stood frozen, my breath shallow, the house no longer a sanctuary but a glass cage. You've heard the stories, haven't you? My neighbor last Christmas found her back door jimmied open, her gifts gone. But the thief left a knife on her table, like a promise. Then, a dull impact shook the window, the glass trembling under a heavy blow. I stumbled back, my eyes locking, on the man outside. He held a jagged rock, his face still expressionless, his eyes dead as he struck again. The glass cracked, spiderwebbing under the force. Run, Clara, now! I bolted to my bedroom, locking the door, my hands shaking as I dialed 911. The blows continued, relentless, then shifted to the front door, each strike splintering wood. I crouched, in the dark, the phone pressed to my ear, whispering to the dispatcher, "You're trapped, the night closing in." His eyes burned into your memory. The attacks paused, then resumed, the door groaning under the assault. Minutes stretched into eternity, my heart pounding so loud I feared he'd hear it. Then, silence, sudden, suffocating. When the police arrived, their headlights swept the yard, but he was gone. Gone like a ghost. The window bore jagged cracks, the door scarred with gouges, chunks of wood scattered on the porch. The cops called it a drunk's rampage, said he had no reason to target me. But those eyes, that rock, the silence, they weren't random. You feel it, don't you? The certainty that he wanted more than your things. I moved out a month later, but the memory clings. A shadow in every quiet night. I see his face in the frost, and I wonder if he's still out there, waiting for another Christmas to claim. There's a stretch of Highway 9 where the night doesn't sleep. Old-timers say it's cursed. that it takes people and leaves only their cars behind. I heard that tale as a rookie cop, sitting in a diner with my partner, his eyes distant as he spoke of a woman who vanished there, her sedan found empty, her scarf fluttering in the wind. I laughed, called it a ghost story. But on a frigid night in late winter, with frost crawling up my cruiser's windows, I found a car on that highway. Its lights dead, its secrets alive. Something moved in the woods, and 10 years on the force couldn't prepare me for the fear that night planted in my bones. Patrol shifts were my refuge, a quiet rhythm of circling Highway 9, pulling over speeders and sipping coffee gone cold. It was nearly spring, but winter clung to the air, sharp as a blade. Around 2 a.m., the road was a black vein under my headlights, flanked by woods so dense they seemed to breathe. I was halfway through my loop, the radio silent, when I saw it. A car tucked far on the shoulder, swallowed by shadows. It wasn't there on my last pass. My stomach twisted, but I chalked it up to a breakdown. Just another abandoned vehicle, I told myself, turning at the next exit to double back. 15 minutes later, I pulled up behind it, my headlights washing the car in harsh light. It was a relic, a 90s sedan, its paint rusted to a sickly brown, dents scarring its frame like wounds. The tires sagged into the gravel, as if it had been there for days, not hours. I radioed dispatch, my voice steady, reporting a possible abandoned vehicle on the southbound lane. Stepping out, the cold bit my face, the air thick with the scent of pine and something fouler. Decay, faint but unmistakable. My flashlight's beam cut through the dark, trembling slightly in my grip. The car's windows were fogged, smudged with grime, and the silence was a weight, pressing on my chest. I approached the driver's side, my boots crunching on frost, each step echoing in the stillness. The glass was scratched, but my light pierced, revealing an empty interior, except for the back seat. Clothes, women's clothes, were strewn across it, a blouse torn, a skirt crumpled, as if someone had fled in panic. My pulse quickened. This isn't a breakdown. I leaned closer, my breath fogging the window, and saw a purse on the floor. Its contents spilled. Lipstick, a cracked phone, a single earring catching the light like a signal. The sour smell grew stronger, curling in my nostrils, and a chill ran through me deeper than the cold. I circled to the passenger side, my flashlight sweeping the interior. A stain on the seat, dark, sticky, too much like blood, made my throat tighten. Then a sound, soft but deliberate, from the woods behind me. A crunch, like a boot on frozen twigs. I spun, my beam stabbing the tree line, but the dark was a wall giving nothing. My heart hammered, the cold searing my lungs. "Show yourself, hands up," I shouted, my voice fraying at the edges. Silence answered, heavy and mocking. I called again, my sidearm drawn now, but the woods stayed still, their branches swaying like whispers. "You're not alone." The thought was a knife, slicing through my training. I radioed for backup, my voice low, reporting possible activity in the woods. I backed toward the car, keeping my eyes on the trees, their shadows twisting in the wind. The smell of decay lingered, mixing with the pine, and the air felt charged, like before a storm. Another crunch, closer, just beyond my light's reach. I crouched behind the car, my flashlight steady, my gun raised. If something happened here, they'll kill to keep it hidden. The woods were alive, watching, their darkness a living thing that pressed against me. 5 minutes stretched into eternity, each second a battle against fear. My flashlight flickered, its beam weakening, and I cursed under my breath. The cold numbed my fingers, but I held my position, my eyes scanning the trees. A third crunch, so close I felt it in my bones, and my light caught something. A shape fleeting, darting between trunks. Human maybe, but too fast, too silent. My breath caught, my mind racing. "What are you?" I wanted to shout, but my voice died in my throat. The radio crackled, backup reporting they were close, and relief flickered, then died as footsteps exploded, sprinting deeper into the woods. The second cruiser pulled up, its lights flooding the scene. We searched the car, finding an empty ammo box, more bloodstains, and no registration. The purse held no ID, just a photo of a young woman, her smile haunting in the flashlight's glow. We scanned the woods, but the dark was too thick, the snow too deep to follow. By dawn, the car was untraceable, its plates stolen, its history a void. Footprints in the snow led nowhere, erased by the wind. The case remains open, a wound that won't close. Someone's out there, watching. Every time I drive Highway 9, I feel them, eyes in the dark, waiting. And when you pass that lonely stretch, you'll feel them too, lurking just beyond the light. The wind screamed outside the Airbnb, a relentless wail that clawed at the windows, pulling me into a fragile, uneasy sleep. It was December 20th, a biting winter night, and I'd just settled into a rented house in a quiet suburban neighborhood, booked for a week to visit family. The place was a picture of comfort, warm lights, soft rugs, and Christmas decorations glowing faintly along the street. I'd collapsed onto the couch, the TV's gentle hum my only companion, expecting a night of rest. But in the heart of the dark, a faint thud, like a pulse echoing in the walls, stirred me, and you'll feel a chill as you sense something lurking just beyond sight. I was Lucas, a tired soul seeking solace after months of chaos. The Airbnb felt like a sanctuary, its wooden floors creaking underfoot, its air heavy with the scent of pine and aged paper. I'd arrived at dusk, too drained to meet my family yet, and spent the evening unpacking, watching reruns, and sipping bitter coffee. This house should have been safe, a shield against the snowy void outside, but I'd learned to distrust such illusions. Last summer I'd stayed in a cabin that unnerved me, doors left ajar, faint scratches on the walls, as if someone had been there before me. I dismissed it as nerves, but that memory gnawed at me now, a quiet warning in the stillness. Half asleep, I lay frozen, the TV's flickering glow casting twisted shadows across the room. Another thud came, soft but deliberate, from somewhere deep downstairs. My pulse quickened, my eyes straining in the dark as I listened. Was it the house settling? The heater rattling? I sat up, the blanket sliding to the floor, my breath shallow. The silence was oppressive, a living thing that pressed against me, watching. I crept to the window, parting the blinds to scan the snow-draped lawn. Nothing stirred, but the wind's howl carried a faint, rhythmic tapping, like fingers brushing the walls. I shook it off, blaming exhaustion, and crawled back to bed, the covers a thin shield against the unease. But you'll feel your heart stir as you imagine lying there, wondering if the sound was real. Sleep pulled me under, and the night dissolved into fragmented dreams, until dawn's cold light spilled through the curtains. I shuffled downstairs, the house silent now, the strange noises buried in memory. I brewed coffee, the machine's hum a small comfort, and planned my day, dinner with family, a chance to reconnect. But as I grabbed my keys and swung open the front door, I froze, staring into the eyes of a man standing on the porch, his gaze piercing through me. He was tall, his heavy coat dusted with snow, his face weathered, etched with lines that spoke of hard years. No knock, no doorbell, just him motionless as if he'd been there for hours waiting. You'll feel your stomach knot as you picture his stillness, a predator sizing up its prey. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice sharp. betraying the fear creeping up my spine. He didn't answer, just nodded once, his eyes cold and unyielding, then turned, vanishing down the sidewalk into the snow. I stood rooted, my breath jagged, the open door letting in a rush of icy air. Why was he here? How long had he stood there watching me sleep? I slammed the door, checking the locks twice, my hands unsteady. The encounter clung to me as I drove to my parents' house, the man's nod replaying in my mind. Dinner was warm, filled with laughter, but I couldn't shake the dread, the sense that something waited back at the house. You'll feel the unease slither in, the fear that you're not alone. I left early, pulling into the Airbnb's driveway at 9:15 p.m., the street shrouded in darkness. I scanned the yard, half expecting his silhouette, but the snow was pristine, the house still. I stepped inside, dropping my keys on the counter, the familiar creak of the floor a fleeting anchor. Then it came, a sharp, bone-rattling thud, like a fist hammering wood, echoing from the side of the house. My heart lurched, the sound louder, closer than the ones last night, cutting through the quiet like a blade. I froze, my eyes darting to the hallway, the air thick with a faint metallic tang. Another thud shook the garage door, the frame groaning, under the force, and you'll feel your pulse race as you stand there, inches from the unknown. I crept forward, each step a battle against fear, my breath shallow in the dim light. The hallway stretched endlessly, the garage door looming at its end, a barrier between me and whatever lay beyond. I stopped, my hand trembling over the light switch, when a new sound pinned me in place. A low, ragged breathing seeping through the door, each exhale heavy with intent. It was human, deliberate, and so close, and you'll feel your skin crawl as you hear it echo in your mind. My knees buckled, panic flooding my veins as I backed away, fumbling for my keys. I bolted for the front door, not daring to glance back, the breathing chasing me like a shadow. I stumbled into my car, locking it tight, and dialed 911, my voice fracturing as I begged for help. The house loomed in my rearview mirror, its windows black, as if it harbored a secret it would never tell. The police arrived, their flashlights slicing through the snow. They searched the house, finding faint scratches on the garage door's lock, as if someone had worked at it with a crude tool. The side door to the garage, hidden behind a hedge, hung open, left unlocked by the last guest, a gap I'd never thought to check. No one was there, no footprints in the fresh snow, but the breathing, the thuds, they were real, burned into my memory. You'll wonder, as I do, if that man on the porch was the one in the garage, biding his time while I slept. I packed my bags and fled to a hotel. The Airbnb no longer a haven, but a trap I'd narrowly escaped. 4 years later, the wail of that wind, the echo of that thud still haunts me, a reminder that safety is a lie. Every time I stay somewhere new, I check the locks, the windows, the corners, because I know he could be out there, his breath still lingering in the dark, waiting. For the moment I let my guard down. The blizzard didn't just howl outside, it carried something to my door, something that knew my name. Hannah curled up by the fireplace, the crackling flames casting a warm glow across her living room, a fragile shield against the early December. Cold. The day off had been a rare gift, spent ticking off chores, dusting shelves, folding laundry, scrubbing dishes, while the world outside turned to ice. Her small house, tucked on a quiet street far from neighbors, felt like a cocoon, safe from the storm brewing beyond the walls. This is your haven, she told herself. Nothing can touch you here. But as the snow piled higher, the wind's wail growing sharper, The house seemed to shrink, its warmth a lie masking the darkness pressing against the windows. The cold seeped through the walls, curling around Hannah's fingers as she sipped tea, her breath visible in the flickering light. The TV hummed in the background, a news anchor droning about high winds and an impending blizzard set to hit by nightfall. By 5 p.m., the storm had begun its assault, the sky a churning gray, snow falling in thick sheets that blurred the world into a white void. "Feel the storm's weight," it seemed to whisper. "Let it bury you." Hannah switched channels, settling on a mindless sitcom, but the wind's roar drowned out the laughter, shaking the house like a living thing. At 7 p.m., the storm's fury peaked, the windows rattling as if the blizzard itself were trying to claw its way inside. Restless, Hannah rose from the couch, her socks silent on the hardwood floor, and crossed to the window overlooking the backyard. The view was chaos, snow rushing to the ground, visibility nearly gone, the world reduced to a swirling haze. Then a shape broke through the white, a figure moving through the backyard at a steady pace as if the storm were no obstacle. "Who's out there?" Her heart lurched, her breath catching. The backyard was large, unfenced, stretching to a road that led nowhere for miles, a path no one could walk in this weather. The figure moved toward the yard's edge, their forms swallowed by the snow and darkness before Hannah could make sense of them. They shouldn't be here. She pressed her face closer to the glass, straining for another glimpse. But the storm offered nothing, its howl a mocking reply. Fear mingled with concern. Were they lost, freezing? But the road's isolation gnawed at her, a warning that their presence was no accident. "Let me tell you about my cousin, Rachel," her mind offered, seeking solace in a memory. Last winter she saw a man in her field during a storm. He stood there, staring at her house, then vanished. Days later, her shed was broken into, tools gone. She swore he'd been watching, planning. The story tightened Hannah's fear, rooting it in a shared dread. She returned to the TV, the sitcom's brightness a frail distraction, but the image of the figure lingered, a shadow in her thoughts. 5 minutes later, a sharp sound cut through the storm. A knock at the front door, deliberate and heavy. Hannah's pulse spiked, her hands trembling as she approached, her bare feet cold against the floor. She peered through the peephole, her breath shallow. A man stood on the porch, his heavy winter jacket dusted with snow, his face pale, nose red from the cold, eyes sunken like he'd been out too long. Is this the same person? Her gut screamed yes, though she couldn't be sure. "How can I help you?" she asked, cracking the door just enough to speak, the wind's icy bite slipping inside. The man's smile was strained, his teeth chattering as he spoke. "I'm waiting for a ride," he said, his voice rough, unsteady. "It's freezing out here. Can I come in just for a few minutes until they get here?" His words carried a plea, but his eyes darted, betraying something else. "Stay cautious, Hannah. Don't trust him." She hesitated, the storm's brutality tugging at her compassion, but Rachel's story echoed in her mind. "You can wait on the porch," she said, pointing to the overhang shielding it from snow. "I'll get you a jacket if you need one." The man's smile faltered, his nod curt, and he shuffled to a chair on the porch, his movements stiff, as if hiding something. Hannah locked the door, her heart pounding, and climbed the stairs to her closet, her mind racing. She grabbed an old jacket, tattered and oversized, its fabric rough under her fingers. He needs help, but something's wrong. She descended, the jacket draped over her arm, but a sudden instinct stopped her at the door, a chill unrelated to the cold. "Don't open it yet." She leaned to the peephole, her breath catching. The man was no longer in the chair. He stood pressed against the door, his hand gripping the handle, his body tensed as if ready to push inside the moment she unlocked. "It He's waiting for me to let him in. Her heart thundered, her hands shaking as she backed away, fumbling for her phone. She dialed 911, her voice a whisper, her eyes locked on the door, knowing what lurked on the other side. The operator promised. Police were coming, but the silence outside grew heavier, more menacing than the storm's roar. Hannah crept to the peephole again, her pulse roaring in her ears. The porch was empty. No man, no jacket, no trace in the snow, as if he'd vanished into the blizzard's heart. He knew I called them. Fear clawed at her chest, her mind replaying his eyes, his grip on the handle, the figure in the yard. The police arrived, their flashlights cutting through the storm, but found nothing, no footprints, no sign of the man, the snow erasing any evidence. They speculated he was a drifter, perhaps fleeing something, but his intent remained a void, a question that haunted Hannah. Was he lost, or was he hunting me? The house was no longer a haven, its walls too thin, the storm's howl a reminder of the night she stood inches from something unspeakable. You kept him out, but what if he's still out there waiting for another storm? Last winter, I drove through a frozen nightmare, a 15-hour journey to see my family, with snow falling like a shroud over the world. My name's Nora, 27, a graphic designer clinging to the promise of a holiday reunion. The highway stretched endlessly, a treacherous ribbon of ice under a sky that devoured light. You're gripping the wheel beside me, aren't you? The storm howling outside, the cold seeping into your bones, and a creeping dread that whispers, "You're not alone out here." I'd made this drive before, a grueling marathon I usually powered, through in one go. But this year, winter struck early, its claws sinking deep into the roads. I left at dawn, the snow just a faint dusting on my windshield, but as the hours dragged on, it thickened, a relentless cascade that blurred the world, beyond my headlights. Feel the strain, Nora. The ache in your shoulders, the burn in your eyes, the weight of the storm pressing down. 8 hours in, I was nowhere near halfway, the clock ticking past 9 p.m. Frustration gnawed at me. I should have been further by now, closer to the warmth of my parents' fireplace. The snow had eased slightly, but the roads were a mess, untouched, by plows, forcing every driver into a cautious crawl. I pushed on, my mind foggy, telling myself I'd stop soon, that tomorrow's drive would be shorter if I kept going. But by midnight, exhaustion overtook me, my vision swimming. The road, a hypnotic blur. I needed sleep, a bed, a refuge from the cold that had settled into my marrow. I veered off at the next exit, following a weathered sign to a motel. A low one-story structure that looked like it hadn't been touched since the 80s. Its neon sign buzzed weakly, half the letters dark, casting a sickly glow over the snow-covered lot. Picture this, a forgotten place, its windows black, the snow untouched by any sign of life. I pulled into the lot, parking near the rooms, my car's engine ticking as it cooled. The wind bit at my face as I stepped out, snowflakes clinging to my coat, the air so cold it stung my lungs. I trudged to the main entrance, a glass door streaked with grime, and pushed inside. The lobby was cramped, the air stale, with a faint smell of mildew. A counter stood empty, a handwritten sign propped against it. Back in 15 minutes, with a clumsy sketch of a coffee cup. You're standing in the silence, Nora, the kind that feels alive, watching you. No one was there, no sound, no warmth. I waited a moment, then turned back, the cold driving me to my car, my boots leaving faint tracks in the snow. Crossing the lot, I froze, my breath catching in my throat. Look closer, Nora. Really look. The parking lot was a void. Not a single car, not a single tire track. Just an expanse of untouched snow stretching into the dark. You've heard the warnings, haven't you? My friend last spring pulled into a gas station at 2 a.m., only to find it abandoned. Her purse stolen while she used the restroom, the thieves watching her every move. Unease slithered through me, cold and sharp. The sign said 15 minutes. But there were no towns for miles, no place for a worker to grab coffee in the dead of night. I climbed back into my car, cranking the heat, the warmth of fleeting comfort against the growing dread. My mind raced. What was this place? I tried to think, to plan my next move, but exhaustion pulled me under. My eyes fluttered shut, the storm's howl fading as I slipped into a fragile sleep. Wake up, Nora, danger's here. I jolted awake, my car rocking in the wind, snow piled high against the windows. The dashboard clock glowed 3:14 a.m. Hours had slipped away. My heart seized as I met a pair of eyes staring through the driver's window. A man's face pressed close, his breath fogging the glass. He sees you, Nora, his gaze a blade cutting through the dark. I recoiled, my pulse a frantic drumbeat, as he pulled back, shouting into the night. Headlights flared across the lot. A pickup truck, its engine a low growl, parked where no vehicle had been before. Another man stepped out, his frame broad, his movements deliberate, closing the distance to my car. Move, Nora, now. The first man circled, yanking at my door handles, his hands desperate, predatory. I scrambled for my keys, my fingers numb. The engine sputtering to life as panic flooded my veins. The second man reached the car, his voice sharp, barking orders to his partner. You're a trapped animal. The snow your cage, their shadows your doom. I threw the car into reverse, tires spinning in the thick snow, the vehicle lurching but going nowhere. The first man raised a heavy tool, a tire iron maybe, and brought down. The back window fracturing, glass spraying across the seats like jagged rain. Feel the cold flood in, the fear choking your scream. I rocked the car, forward, back, my breath ragged as the man reached through the broken window, his fingers brushing the door lock. I floored the gas, the tires finally catching. The car, jerking free with a violent spin. The man stumbled, falling into the snow, his curses swallowed by the storm. The second man sprinted for his truck, its headlights blinding me as I swerved toward the exit ramp. I sped onto the highway, the icy road no match for my terror, my eyes darting to the rearview mirror. The truck followed for a moment, its lights, a menacing glow, then faded, the storm consuming it. I drove until the sky lightened, my hands trembling, the broken window letting in a freezing gust that numbed my skin. You escaped, Nora, but the night's claws are still in you. I blamed myself for stopping, for sleeping in that forsaken lot, but the truth was darker, more insidious. That motel wasn't a haven, it was a snare, a place where predators stalked, the weary, the lost. You see their eyes, don't you? In the snow, in the shadows, waiting for the next traveler to pull in. I reached my family, but the memory festers, a scar that whispers every time I drive at night. Every empty lot, every flickering sign. I wonder if they're still out there, their truck lurking in the storm, hunting for another soul to claim. The night didn't just feel cold. It felt like it was hunting me, waiting for me to step into its jaws. Sophie gripped the steering wheel of her old hatchback, the dashboard's dim glow casting shadows across her face. It was a Friday night, in late November, just weeks before her college's holiday break, and the campus was quiet, her dorm room too stifling for another evening of scrolling through social media. With no plans and a need for cash, she'd fired up the Uber Eats app, ready to make a few bucks delivering food. This is just another night, she told herself. Easy money, no trouble. But as the wind howled outside, stirring the thin layer of snow left from an earlier flurry, the city's edges felt sharper. the darkness beyond her headlights hiding something she couldn't name. The cold seeped through the car's worn seals, nipping at Sophie's fingers as she navigated the quiet streets, her breath fogging the air inside the cabin. The heater rattled, barely keeping the chill at bay, and the radio flickered with static, its music drowned by the wind's low moan. "Feel the night's edge," it seemed to whisper. "Let it pull you in." She'd completed a handful of deliveries. By 6 p.m., the orders routine. Drop-offs at apartments quick and faceless. Then, a new order pinged. A pickup from a nearby Burger King, but the drop-off address was odd. Not a house, but a street corner. Likely a gas station. Strange, but not a big deal, she thought, clicking to start the route, the GPS guiding her through the city's outskirts, where streetlights grew sparse and the roads felt forgotten. Sophie pulled into the Burger King, the neon sign casting a harsh glow over the parking lot, and grabbed the order, a greasy bag of burgers and fries, the warmth seeping through the paper. Back in her car, she checked the app again, zooming in on the destination. It was indeed a gas station, isolated at the intersection of two empty roads, the kind of place that felt like it belonged to the night. Why order delivery to a gas station? Unease prickled at her spine, but she brushed it off, assuming it was a worker or someone passing through. She drove on, the wind picking up, swirling snow across the road like ghosts dancing in her headlights. The city fell away, replaced by shuttered stores and dark fields. The gas station's faint lights a lone beacon in the void. She arrived at the station, its pumps standing like sentinels under flickering fluorescent lights. The parking lot eerily empty. Where is everyone? Sophie parked at the back, the bag warm in her lap, and scanned the lot for any sign of the customer. The app should have notified them of her arrival, but no one appeared. No cars, no people. Just the wind's wail and the snow's soft patter against her windshield. This feels wrong. She sent a text through the app, her fingers hesitating over the keys. "I'm here in the parking lot, waiting." Minutes passed, the silence growing heavier, her breath shallow as she peered into the darkness. She stepped out, the cold biting her face, and looked around. The intersection deserted, the stores across the street shuttered, their windows black as voids. "Let me tell you about my friend Mia," her mind offered, grasping for comfort. She delivered pizza last summer, dropped off an order at a weird address, a vacant lot. A guy came out of nowhere, tried to grab her bag, but she sped off. She said his eyes were empty, like he wasn't human. The memory tightened Sophie's fear, anchoring it to a shared dread. She was about to return to her car when headlights pierced the night, a vehicle pulling into the lot. Finally. But her relief shattered as an old, dark red pickup truck rolled past the pumps, parking just 2 spaces away, its tinted windows hiding. Whoever was inside. Why drive here if you ordered delivery? Her stomach twisted, the air growing thicker as if the night itself were closing in. The driver's door opened, and a man stepped out, his figure hunched against the wind. His clothes were filthy, stained and torn, his face weathered, like someone who'd lived on the road too long. He doesn't look right. Sophie forced a smile, holding up the bag, but the man didn't acknowledge it. His eyes locked onto hers, cold and unblinking, a predator's gaze that sent a shiver down her spine. "Get out of here now." Instinct screamed, her heart pounding as she set the bag on the ground, her movements slow, deliberate, hoping to avoid provoking him. The man's pace quickened, his boots crunching through the snow, his intent clear in the way his shoulders tensed, his hands flexing at his sides. Sophie dove into her car, her fingers fumbling with the keys, the engine roaring. To life as the man reached her door, his shadow looming through the window. Go, go, go. She threw the car into reverse, tires slipping on the icy pavement, and floored it. The man lunging back to his truck, the bag abandoned in the snow. As she peeled out of the lot, she saw the truck's headlights flare, the vehicle speeding toward the exit, chasing her into the night. He's following me. Panic surged, her hands trembling as she ran a red light, weaving through empty streets, the truck's lights a relentless presence in her rearview mirror. She pushed the car harder, her breath ragged until she reached a busier road, other cars offering a fragile shield. The truck slowed, then turned away, its taillights swallowed by the darkness. Sophie pulled over, her chest heaving, and called the police, her voice shaking as she recounted the encounter. They took her statement, but without a license plate, her mind too frantic to note it. There was little they could do. Did he even have a plate? The question gnawed at her, a detail lost in the chaos. The police found nothing at the station. The bag gone, the snow erasing any trace. What did he want? The night offered no answers, only a lingering dread that clung to her like frost. Her dorm felt less safe now. The city streets a maze of shadows, each one hiding the man's eyes, his silent pursuit. You escaped, but what if he's still out there, waiting for another night? The winter of 2015, I spent my first Christmas alone in a house that still felt like a stranger's, far from the hometown I'd left behind. My name's Avery, 29, a freelance writer tethered to my laptop, isolated in a new town where I knew no one. The snow outside was a silent veil, hiding secrets in its folds. You're here with me now, aren't you? In this quiet house on Christmas Eve, the air thick with solitude, sensing a shadow that doesn't belong. Something's watching and it's closer than you think. I'd moved into this small, creaky house a year earlier, its walls still unfamiliar, its corners holding echoes of someone else's life. I worked from home, my days a blur of deadlines, and silence my social circle a void. Christmas crept up with no fanfare. My family was too far, my vacation days too few, so I resigned myself to a holiday alone. Feel the weight of that solitude, Avery. The way it presses against you, heavy as the snow outside. On Christmas Eve, I stayed up late in the living room, my laptop glowing, soft music filling the space. The house was warm, the radiator humming, but the night outside was a frozen expanse, the snow glowing faintly under streetlights. I was lost in my work when a faint sound cut through the music. A shuffle, like footsteps in the snow. I pulled out an earbud, straining to listen, but the house was still, the music a gentle hum. Listen closer, Avery. The night is speaking. I stood, my socks silent on the hardwood, and checked the back window. Nothing but snow and shadows. Diocese's front window showed the same empty street, but when I peered through the glass panel of the front door, my breath caught. Footprints in the snow, fresh and deliberate, leading to my doorstep and back to the driveway. No package, no mail, just the prints stark against the white, as if someone had stood there watching at 11 p.m. on Christmas Eve. A chill ran through me, sharper than the cold. I locked the door, my heart uneasy, and returned to my work. But the image lingered, a splinter in my mind. I went to bed soon after, the house feeling smaller, the silence heavier. You felt this before, haven't you? The way a quiet night can turn menacing, the way every shadow becomes a threat. Christmas morning dawned, but it felt like any other day. No tree, no gifts, just the hum of routine. I brewed coffee, its bitter scent grounding me, and settled into an armchair with the TV on, its chatter a thin shield against the loneliness. I called my parents, their voices warm but distant, a reminder of the miles between us. The day dragged, the wind howling, Outside, the cold too biting to venture out. I stayed in, cooking a simple dinner as dusk fell, the sky a bruised purple by 6 p.m. You're safe inside, aren't you? But the night has other plans. As I cleared my plate, a sound stopped me cold. Footsteps in the snow, slow and deliberate, approaching the front door. My pulse quickened. No one should be here, not on Christmas night. I held my breath, waiting, and the steps retreated, fading into the dark. I crept to the door, peering out, and saw them again. Those same footprints, an eerie echo of the night before, leading to the doorstep and away. Dread settled in my chest, heavy and cold. I forced myself to stay awake, sitting on the couch, the TV's glow a flickering comfort, but exhaustion won. My eyes closed around 10 p.m., my body sinking into the cushions, the remote slipping from my hand. I woke hours later, the room bathed in the TV's eerie light, its colors dancing across the walls. "Wake up, Avery. Something's wrong." I sat up, pausing the screen, the sudden silence deafening. I stood, intending to head to bed, but as I walked down the hallway, my gaze locked on my bedroom door. It was open, a dark maw where I knew I'd left it closed. You always close it, don't you? The habit that keeps you safe. My heart pounded as I pushed the door wider, flicking on the light. Wet footprints stained the floor, a chaotic trail leading from the window to the doorway. The snow melted into dirty smears. "He was here, Avery, while you slept." I spun around, turning on the hallway light, and saw more prints stretching toward the living room, stopping just outside, as if someone had stood there, watching me sleep, before turning back. The prints ended at the window, its lock untouched, but the truth was undeniable. Someone had been inside my home. I called the police, my voice trembling, but they offered little comfort. They found no one, no fingerprints, just the tracks in the snow outside fading into the night. You're alone again, but not really. They theorized the intruder had come the previous nights to check if I was home, assuming I'd be away for the holidays, a thief looking for an easy mark. But the thought of him standing over me, his shadow falling across my sleeping form, turned my blood to ice. You've heard the rumors, haven't you? The neighbor down the street last winter woke to find her window jimmied open, her jewelry gone, a note left behind. "I watched you sleep." He never returned, but the memory haunts me, a ghost in every quiet night. I moved away months later, but every Christmas I see those footprints in the snow, and I wonder if he's still out there waiting for another house to claim. The Christmas lights didn't just glow. They hid something in their shadows, something that followed me home. Emma sank into the couch, the flicker of the TV casting a soft glow across the small suburban house she shared with her college roommate, Liam. It was Christmas Day 2 years ago, and the holiday had been a quiet affair. Neither of their families cared much for celebrations, and their student budgets meant staying put for the winter break. They'd strung up some dollar store lights, exchanged cheap gifts, and planned a lazy day of movies. But the emptiness of the season lingered. This is still home, Emma told herself. A safe place, even without the festive cheer. But as the night deepened, the house felt too still. The warmth of their tiny Christmas tree, a fragile shield against the cold darkness pressing against the windows. The air inside was warm, scented with pine from the tree, but a chill seeped through the walls, curling around Emma's fingers as she munched on chips, the TV droning with a holiday rom-com. Liam had headed out at 5 p.m., eager for a campus party. But Emma, drained from a long semester, opted to stay behind. Her body, heavy with exhaustion, let him have fun, she thought. You need this quiet. By 6, the house was hers, the silence broken only by the TV's chatter and the occasional gust of wind rattling the windows. But by 8, restlessness stirred. The rom-com felt hollow. The house, too empty. Get out, move, her mind urged. She grabbed her jacket, the cold fabric a shock against her skin, and decided to walk the neighborhood, drawn to the glow of Christmas lights adorning the suburban homes. The night was crisp, the air sharp, but not unbearable. The streets quiet under a thin dusting of snow. Emma wandered through the neighborhood, her boots leaving soft imprints, the lights on houses twinkling like stars against the dark. She cut through a nearby park, its paths winding through dense trees, the festive glow fading behind her. Feel. The night's calm, it seemed to whisper. Let it wrap around you. But as she passed a bench, a figure caught her eye. A man sitting alone, his silhouette stark against the snow. The path was secluded, far from houses, and his presence felt wrong, like a shadow out of place. When she glanced at him, his head turned, his eyes locking onto hers, cold and unyielding, a gaze that pierced her like ice. He's just lonely, she told herself, quickening her pace, but the weight of his stare clung to her, a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. Emma hurried out of the park, her heart uneasy. The man's face burned into her mind. Blank, emotionless, wrong. Let me tell you about my neighbor Jess, her mind offered, seeking solace. Last Christmas, she walked home alone and felt someone watching her. Days later, her garage was broken into, tools gone. She swore she saw the same man lurking near her street. The memory tightened Emma's fear, rooting it in a shared dread. She reached the house, her breath visible in the cold, and fumbled with her keys, the door swinging open to the familiar warmth. She stepped inside, locking it behind her, kicking off her shoes, the relief of home washing over her. But before she could move, a heavy sound jolted her, a sharp thud against the door as if someone had pressed against it, testing its strength. He followed me. Emma's heart pounded, her body frozen, the air thick with panic. She crept to the peephole, her hands trembling, and peered out. The man from the park stood on the porch, his face blank, no smile, no frown, just an empty stare fixed on the door. What does he want? She cracked the door an inch, her voice shaky. Are you okay? The man's eyes met hers, cold and lifeless, offering no answer. Do you need help? She tried again, but he remained silent, his presence a silent threat. Get away from him. She shut the door, locking it, and returned to the peephole, her breath shallow. He stood there, unmoving, for a full minute, then stepped to the side, out of view. He's still out there. She glanced at the living room window. The curtains open, revealing the Christmas tree and couch, a stage for his gaze. Fear kept her rooted, unwilling to approach the window, knowing he was watching, his eyes piercing the glass. As she stood, paralyzed, another sound broke the silence. A heavy impact against the window, the glass trembling under the force. He's, trying to get in. Emma stumbled back, her pulse roaring, and saw the man outside, a large rock in his hands, his face still emotionless, the blankness more terrifying than rage. He struck again, the window cracking, each blow a violation of her sanctuary. Run, hide now. She sprinted to her bedroom, locking the door, her hands shaking as she dialed 911, her voice a whisper as she begged for help. The impacts continued, shifting to the front door, the wood splintering under the assault, each strike echoing like a heartbeat of dread. He's going to break through. The sound stretched on, minutes feeling like hours until they stopped, replaced by a silence so heavy it suffocated her. Emma stayed locked in the room, clutching her phone, until police lights flashed outside. She emerged, her legs weak, to find the officers searching the yard. The man was gone, vanished into the night, leaving behind a cracked window and a front door scarred with splintered wood. He was here. He was real. The police suggested he was intoxicated, a random act, but his emotionless stare told a different story, one of intent too dark to name. What did he want? The house was no longer a haven, its festive lights a mockery. The Christmas tree's glow a reminder of the night she came so close to something unspeakable. You survived. But what if he's still out there, watching, waiting for another Christmas? It was early December, and I was cocooned in my house, the fireplace casting a warm glow against the blizzard brewing outside. My name's Selena, 32, a school teacher savoring a rare day off, tucked away in a rural home that felt like a fortress, against the cold. But the snow was a shroud, hiding something in its depths. You're sitting by the fire with me, aren't you? The wind howling like a beast, the warmth a fragile lie, and a feeling that something's out there, waiting to step into your light. The day had been a quiet retreat, the kind I craved after weeks of grading papers and managing classrooms. I'd spent it tending to small chores, dusting shelves, folding laundry, while the news droned in the background, warning of high winds and a blizzard set to strike by nightfall. Feel the calm before the storm, Selena. The way it lulls you, makes you think you're safe. By 5 p.m., the sky had darkened, the snow falling in thick sheets, the wind a relentless force battering the house. I settled onto the couch, switching the TV to a cooking show, its cheerful host a stark contrast to the chaos outside. Around 7 p.m., the storm's fury peaked, the wind a feral roar, shaking the windows in their frames. I stood, drawn to the window overlooking the backyard, my breath fogging the glass. Look closer, Selena. The snow isn't empty. At first, I saw only the blizzard, a white void with no horizon, but then a figure, a shadow moving through the snow, walking across my unfenced yard at a steady pace. My heart stuttered. The yard stretched wide, open to the elements, but no one should be out there. Not in this storm. Not when the nearest road led nowhere for miles. The figure moved toward the yard's edge, vanishing into the darkness, swallowed by the snow's embrace. I stayed by the window, my fingers pressed to the cold glass, straining to see more, to understand. You're scared for them, aren't you? But you're scared of them too. The blizzard was a death sentence. No one could survive it on foot, not for long. I returned to the couch, the TV's chatter now a hollow comfort, my mind racing with questions. Who were they? Why were they here? 5 minutes later, a sharp rap at the door jolted me upright, my pulse surging. He's here, Selena. On your doorstep, in the storm. I crept to the door, cracking it open, the wind rushing in like a thief. A man stood on my porch, bundled in a heavy jacket, his face pale, his nose red from the cold, his eyes shadowed but piercing. "How can I help you?" I asked, my voice barely steady. He smiled, a strained, trembling thing, his teeth chattering as he spoke. "I'm waiting for a ride. Can I come in, just for a few minutes to get out of the cold?" His words were a plea, his condition undeniable. He looked half frozen, a man on the edge of collapse. I hesitated, my hand on the door, torn between compassion and fear. "You've heard the warnings, haven't you? My colleague last winter let a stranded driver into her home during a storm, only to find her kitchen ransacked the next day, her sense of safety stolen. In a storm like this, it's easy to say you'd never let a stranger in. But when they're shivering on your doorstep, the choice isn't so clear. You can wait on the porch," I said, gesturing to the overhang that shielded it from the snow. "I'll get you a jacket if you need one." His smile faded, his eyes narrowing for a fleeting moment. But he nodded, stepping to the side and sinking into the chair I kept out there. I locked the door, my heart uneasy, and climbed the stairs to grab an old jacket. Tattered, too big, but warm enough for this moment. You're doing the right thing, aren't you? Or are you? I descended, the jacket bundled in my arms, but as I reached for the lock, something stopped me. A prickle of instinct, a whisper of danger. I leaned toward the peephole, my breath shallow. He's there, Selena, pressed against the door, his hand on the handle, waiting to strike. His posture was no longer that of a desperate man seeking shelter. He was poised, ready to push inside the moment I opened the door. My heart raced, a frantic rhythm, as I backed away, my fingers trembling as I dialed 911, whispering into the phone. My eyes locked on the door. You know what's on the other side, don't you? A predator in the storm, his mask slipping. The dispatcher promised help, but as I crept back to the peephole, he was gone. No sign of him on the porch, no footprints in the fresh snow, as if he'd vanished into the blizzard itself. Gone, like a ghost, but his shadow lingers. The police arrived, their lights cutting through the storm, but found nothing. No tracks, no evidence, just the howling wind and the snow that buried all truths. I stayed in that house, but the memory clings, a cold hand on my spine. Every storm, every gust of wind, I see his face, pale and predatory, and I wonder what he would have done if I'd let him in, if he's still out there, walking through the snow, searching for another door to knock on. The house wasn't just a rental, it was a trap, and I didn't know it until the darkness whispered my name. Laura stepped into the Airbnb, the scent of pine cleaner and old wood greeting her as she dropped her suitcase by the door. It was December 20th, 4 years ago, and she'd booked the house, a modest two-story home in a quiet neighborhood, to be near her family for the Christmas holidays. The place was unremarkable, its beige walls and dated furniture blending into the suburban sprawl, but it felt safe. A temporary haven just miles from her parents' home. This is your home for the week, she told herself. A place to rest, to reconnect. But as the winter night settled over the town, the house's warmth seemed to falter, its silence hiding a presence she couldn't yet sense. Laura's arrival at, say, 6 p.m. left her too drained to visit family, her body heavy from the drive. She sank onto the couch, the TV's hum filling the living room with sitcom reruns, a distraction from the cold seeping through the windows. Feel the calm of this place, it seemed to murmur. Let it hold you. She worked on her laptop, answering emails, the glow casting shadows across the room, before climbing into bed just before 10. Sleep came quickly, but in the dead of night a sound pulled her from dreams. Soft, rhythmic thumps, like something brushing against the walls downstairs. Just the house settling, she thought, half asleep, her mind too foggy to care. The noises faded, and she drifted back into sleep, the memory buried by morning. Dawn brought clarity, the night's sounds forgotten as Laura texted her family, confirming dinner plans at their house. She spent the day lounging, the Airbnb's cozy normalcy reassuring. Coffee on the counter, sunlight streaming through the windows, the neighborhood quiet under a thin layer of snow. Everything's fine, she told herself. Just a new place. New sounds. By afternoon, she grabbed her bag and keys, ready to head out. But as she opened the front door, her breath caught. A man stood on the porch inches away, his face pale, his eyes fixed on her with an unsettling stillness. He didn't knock. Her heart lurched, her voice unsteady. "Can I help you?" The man offered no reply, only a curt nod, before turning and walking down the sidewalk, his figure fading into the street's gray haze. Why was he here? How long was he standing there? The encounter gnawed at her, its strangeness a splinter in her mind. Laura locked the door, her hands trembling, and drove to her parents' house, the man's silent presence haunting her. At dinner, she shared the story, her family echoing her unease, their laughter tinged with nervous glances. "Let me tell you about my Aunt Sarah," her mind offered, seeking comfort. She stayed at a rental once, heard footsteps outside every night. One morning she found scratches on the door, like someone had tested the lock. She never stayed in rentals again. The memory tightened Laura's fear, rooting it in a shared dread. She left dinner early, around 9 p.m., her thoughts circling the Airbnb, her belongings vulnerable. The drive back was tense, the neighborhood's festive lights a stark contrast to the knot in her chest. She parked in the driveway, scanning the yard for signs of intrusion, but the snow was untouched, the house dark and still. Unlocking the door, she stepped inside, the hallway's chill wrapping around her. She dropped her keys and bag on the kitchen counter, the clatter echoing in the quiet. Then, a sound stopped her cold. A heavy thump, louder than the night before, coming from, the side of the house. It's not the house. Her pulse quickened, her feet moving toward the sound, drawn by a mix of fear and need to know. Another thump, closer now, from a door in the next room. Someone's here. She froze, adrenaline surging, as a faint, ragged breathing seeped through the door, each exhale a confirmation of her worst fears. Run, now. Laura grabbed her keys, her legs carrying her to the car, her mind a blur of panic. She didn't look back, didn't wait to understand. She just drove, the house shrinking in her rearview mirror, its lights a fading promise of safety. Get away, stay safe. She called 911 from a gas station, her voice shaking as she recounted. The sounds, the breathing, the man on the porch. Police arrived, their search revealing a horrifying truth. The noises came from the garage door, its lock battered, showing signs of attempted entry. A side door to the garage, leading outside, had been left unlocked by a previous guest, a vulnerability Laura never knew existed. They were inside while I slept. The thought chilled her, her skin crawling at the realization of how close she'd come to danger. The police found no trace of the intruder, the snow erasing any footprints, leaving only questions. Was the man on the porch the same person in the garage? What did he want? He was there, watching, waiting. Laura checked into a hotel, the Airbnb abandoned, its cozy facade a lie that haunted her. The holiday passed in a blur, her family's warmth unable to erase the fear that lingered. A shadow that followed her even years later. You escaped, but what if he's still out there, waiting for another unlocked door? A few weeks before the school's holiday break, I took to the streets for a late-night delivery run. The city wrapped in a biting chill that seeped through my car's windows. My name's Kai, 19, a college kid scraping by on Uber Eats gigs to afford my textbooks. The roads were dusted with snow, the air sharp with winter's edge. You're riding shotgun with me now, aren't you? The dashboard glowing, the night pressing in, and a feeling that this delivery is about to go terribly wrong. It was a Friday night, the kind where most people were tucked away in warm houses, but I had no plans, just a restless itch to make some extra cash instead of lounging at home. I fired up the app around 6 p.m., the sky already dark, the streets slick with a thin layer of snow from earlier in the day. The wind howled outside, rattling my car's frame, but I shrugged it off, focusing on the orders trickling in. Feel the monotony, Kai. The rhythm of pickup, drop-off, the way it numbs you to the night. I handled a few deliveries, pizza to a dorm, tacos to an apartment, before a new order popped up from a nearby Burger King. I grabbed the food, the bag warm in my hands, and checked the app for the drop-off. The address wasn't a house, which caught me off guard. Zooming in, I realized it was a gas station at the corner of two streets, an unusual spot for a delivery. You've done this before, haven't you? Dropped off food at weird places, but something about this feels off. I tapped begin route, telling myself it was probably just an awkward handoff, maybe a worker grabbing a late dinner. The drive took me through quiet streets, the city's pulse fading as I neared the intersection. The gas station came into view, its fluorescent lights harsh against the dark, but the lot was empty. No cars, no people, just the hum of the pumps and the wind's relentless bite. Picture it, a deserted station, the kind that feels like a stage set for something sinister. I pulled into a spot at the back, scanning the area, expecting someone to step out, maybe wave me over. The app should have notified the customer I'd arrived, but minutes passed and no one appeared. I sent a quick message through the app, "I'm in the parking lot waiting for you," and stepped out of the car, the cold hitting me like a wave, my breath fogging in the air. The intersection was a ghost town, no cars passing. The stores across the street shuttered for the night. You're alone, Kai, the silence wrapping around you, whispering that you shouldn't be here. I checked my phone again. No response. The longer I stood there, the heavier the unease settled in my chest, a weight I couldn't shake. Just as I turned back to my car, headlights sliced through the dark. A dark red pickup truck, old and battered, rolling into the lot. It's here, Kai. The moment the night turns. It bypassed the pumps, heading straight for me, parking just a few spots away. The truck's windows were tinted black as the night, and my first thought was sharp, cutting through the cold. Why order delivery if you're just driving here? I'd wondered if the customer was a worker, maybe someone loitering, but this felt wrong, deeply wrong. The driver's door opened, and a man stepped out, his appearance like something out of a nightmare. You see him now, don't you? A man who looks like he's been carved from the road itself, his clothes stained, torn, his face hollow. He was tall, gaunt, his jacket frayed at the edges, dirt smudged across his hands. I forced a smile, holding up the bag, but he didn't even glance at it. His eyes locked onto mine, unblinking, predatory, and a chill ran through me, colder than the wind, urging me to run. I set the bag on the ground, my instincts screaming, and the moment I did, he moved faster, his steps deliberate, closing the distance between us. "Run, Kai, don't look back." I scrambled into my car, the door slamming as I turned the key, my heart pounding like a drum. He reached my window, his hand brushing the handle, but then he turned, sprinting back to his truck, leaving the food abandoned in the snow. I backed out, tires skidding as he peeled out of his spot, speeding toward the exit I was fleeing through. "He's coming for you, Kai, the red truck a beast in your rear view." I floored it, running a red light, the city's lights a blur as I raced down the road, weaving through sparse traffic until I reached a busier stretch. The truck followed for a moment, its headlights a menacing glare, then veered off, disappearing into the night. I pulled over when I felt safe, my hands trembling, as I called the police, but nothing came of it. "You didn't see his license plate, did you? Or did he even have one?" I hadn't thought to check in the chaos, and looking back, I'm not sure there was a plate at all. You've heard the stories, haven't you? My coworker last semester took a delivery to a warehouse, only to be cornered by two men who stole his car, leaving him stranded in the cold. I quit deliveries a month later, but the memory lingers, a shadow that follows me on every quiet street. That red truck, that man's eyes. They haunt me, a reminder of how close I came to something I'll never understand. Every empty lot, every late-night drive, I see him in the corner of my vision, waiting for another chance to finish what he started.